Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. American comics start with Level 5 Mutants. Chapter 41. At this moment, the scene fell into silence, and everyone had shock in their eyes. Eddie didn't feel very calm. After getting the venom, even though he didn't think much about it, deep down he still felt that he was special, until he met the person in front of him. Different from Venom's ability, whether it is the blue beam of light or the means of rebounding bullets, each looks very powerful, and the other party did not do anything, just raised his hand and solved everything. There seemed to be an intimidating momentum rising from each other, making people feel suffocating. It seemed that any resistance they made was in vain. Triss and the others were breathing heavily, with cold sweat breaking out on their foreheads, and they also felt the pressure. Life Foundation. Drake and the others stared at the screen closely, their emotions constantly fluctuating. A more perfect creature than a symbiote human. This amazing momentum and power is like a god. The venom in Eddie's body took a long time to recover from the disbelief. Such a powerful host. This kind of power that can solve everything easily, how does it look like a human being? His significant other actually coexists with this guy. At this moment, even if he didn't want to, Venom couldn't help but feel jealous in his heart. When they were shocked, because the sound wave equipment was destroyed, the venom in Su Yao's right hand returned to normal. The black liquid slowly squirmed and emerged from Su Yao's right hand. I told you you would regret it. A slightly ferocious smile appeared on Venom's small face. He smiled and said, I live in symbiosis with him. I don't bring him strength. On the contrary, he brings strength to me. You can't understand that feeling at all, the feeling that makes me obsessed. As he said that, he turned to look at Triss and the others, and said with a strange smile, reptiles, crawl on your knees, you can't win. You can't imagine how powerful my host is. Although at this moment Venom was also frightened by the scene of the blue beam of light and the rebounding bullet, and was shocked by the power of his host, it did not hinder his pretentiousness at this moment. Life Foundation. Drake hesitated for a moment and ordered to the communicator, shoot. When Triss and other security guards heard this, they suppressed their fear, gritted their teeth and raised the guns in their hands. Bang bang bang. The silver bullets rotated and whizzed towards the target. Then, a scene that made them even more suffocated appeared. This time the man in black didn't even raise his hand, he just stood there quietly. The bullets that were shot towards him actually turned around and reflected back towards them. Rebound shield experience +1. Rebound shield experience +1. Ah, for a while, screams could be heard endlessly. The more bullets they fired, the more miserable the moment became. Some people were even hit in the heart by reflected bullets and fell to the ground twitching. However, even if it was relatively mild, it was not much better now. There were basically blood stains on the body, and symptoms of blood loss appeared. At this moment, the feeling brought by the man in black was even more suffocating, and despair appeared in everyone's eyes. Forget it if the bullet is ineffective, the opponent didn't even move, and the bullet was fired. They had never felt as suffocated as they did now, and they also felt a sense of invincibility. Not to mention them, even the venom emerging from Eddie's body had his mouth widened and his eyes widened. He was obviously shocked by this scene. The venom in Su Yao's hand suppressed the shock in his heart, and he mocked unkindly, quack, abandon half of my body, you see, this is the power that belongs to my great host. The venom in Eddie's body was angered, and at the same time there was envy and jealousy in his heart. At this time, the sound of a police car sounded in the distance, as if someone had called the police. Hearing the sound of the police car, the mysterious man in black moved slightly and walked away from here. Seeing him leaving, Eddie Brock couldn't help it and shouted, who the hell are you? The man in black turned his head and glanced at him. Under the shadow of the hood, a pair of bright golden eyes came into his eyes. In a daze, Eddie felt as if he had seen the eyes of God. When he came back to his senses, the mysterious man in black had already gone away, and only the venom on the other person's body could be heard from afar, and a sinister laugh came from the distance. We will meet again. Look forward. The figure of the mysterious man in black gradually faded away. At this moment, a sound not far away caught Eddie's attention. Before he could recover, a dark venom suit was draped over his body. A bullet lodged in the venom suit. Humanity. Venom roared in frustration, and then roared towards Triss and the others under their panicked eyes. Puff puff. A series of head-gnawing sounds sounded. When everything calmed down, only bodies were left on the ground. Life Foundation. Everyone in Drake who was watching the battle was panicked and angry at the same time. Drake hammered the table hard with his right hand, his face filled with unwillingness. Although it was Eddie who killed most of his people, at this moment, his mind couldn't help but picture the mysterious figure dressed in black. Eddie, who was far away from the battlefield, was talking to Venom. Who is he? Eddie murmured in confusion. He searched for the memories in his mind and felt vaguely familiar, but he couldn't remember it. Humph, Eddie, why are you thinking so much? My other half said we would see you again, and you will always know when the time comes. Venom said sarcastically. Eddie looked at Venom's ferocious appearance and asked, who are you? My name is Venom. Venom surrounded Eddie and said in a hoarse voice, your body belongs to me. Did you just bite someone's head off? I need to replenish my strength. Listen carefully, Eddie. You didn't find us, we found you, you are like my mount. Venom swore ownership. Eddie said as he walked, like a parasite. Your attitude towards me is different from how your partner treats the guy in black. I think he is very attentive, like a shepherd dog. Eddie was a little unhappy and said what he had to say. Venom. Suddenly, he noticed something. Parasite, Eddie. Venom roared. In the bickering, Eddie and Venom's conversation continued. Where are you taking me? We're going to find Drake's rocket, you know the guy. How do you know I know this guy? I know everything, Eddie. Real, I know everything about you. I'm in your head. Will you eat people when you're hungry? Probably. Oh my God, we come to Earth just for food. If you cooperate well, you can survive. This is my condition. Eddie had mixed feelings. At this time, a cell phone ringtone rang from him. Eddie took out his cell phone and took a look and found that it was a call from a colleague. As soon as the call was connected, a questioning female voice came from the other end of the phone. Eddie, we have been waiting for you downstairs at the Life Foundation for a long time. Where are you? Eddie said in embarrassment, listen to my explanation. On the other side, the man in black in Eddie's eyes was walking in a remote alley. In the remote alley, Venom transformed into a small head with confusion on his face. Sue, why did we leave like that? He expressed confusion. Didn't he agree to stop Drake from launching a rocket to bring back the symbiote? Sue Yao glanced at him and said leisurely, I believe that Eddie, he should be able to stop that Drake. Of course, this was just bullshit. He just felt that it would take a long time for Drake to launch a rocket. If he had that time to stop the opponent, he might as well work hard to develop. If Orochi raises all his abilities to the maximum, the so-called symbiote meteorite will be nothing to him. Su Yao shook his head and said, besides, the water on the earth is very deep, and there are more people and things than you can imagine. There are always people to deal with some things. We just need to watch the show. How deep is the water? Venom's little face was full of confusion, expressing his confusion. If it's not just the earth, how deep is the water? Doubts flashed through his mind, and his attention turned to the scene not long ago. His face was full of excitement. Sue, you were so powerful just now. There is no one they are not afraid of. They are all afraid of you. You didn't see the expression on that stupid half of my body, it's so wonderful. After saying that, a look of surprise appeared on his face, and he said in disbelief, Sue, the blue energy you fired from your hands earlier and the bullets you reflected are all your superpowers. Then, he thought of the two killers from earlier. At that time, the host also showed other superpowers. Do you have too many abilities? Venom looked incredulous. He has completely coexisted with several humans, and the memories of those humans are all in his head. He clearly knows that there seems to be something wrong with the host in front of him. A little unusually strong. Shaking his little black head, Venom didn't think much about it, thinking that the host was just a little bit different from ordinary people. Sue, where are we going now? Venom asked curiously. Leave this area first. I told you before that I am being hunted. As he spoke, Su Yao quickly moved away from this area. On the way, rays of sunlight shone on him. Light energy +1. Light energy +1. Light energy +1. Unlocking progress 80%. Energy points, 298. Su Yao glanced at the panel. There is still a long way to go to reach 85% of the energy points. After more than half an hour, Su Yao gradually stopped. In Venom's puzzled expression, he started practicing with black particles. Black particle experience +1. Black particle experience +1. Soon, it was evening. Ability: Black particles 266 500ths level 2. Looking at the data on the panel, Su Yao breathed a sigh of relief. It took about a whole day to get this data, and I should be able to upgrade it tomorrow evening. If it weren't for maintaining the energy in the body, this data could be increased by 1 liter. Then, he stepped away from here, and with the help of Venom's perception, he chose a secluded corner and fell asleep. With the Venom sensing danger warning and the light energy detecting abnormalities in his body, he was not too worried. The next morning, light energy +1, light energy +1, light energy +1. In a daze, Su Yao woke up from the sound of a prompt. Glancing at the panel, energy points, 355. After getting up, his face was filled with anticipation, and he continued to practice the black particles amidst Venom's confused expression. Time passed quickly, and soon it was evening. A reminder sounded in his head. Ability: Black particles 0.001 level 3. Looking at the refreshed data on the panel and feeling the sudden inexplicable changes in his body, Su Yao felt happy. What happened? Venom woke up instantly and noticed that Su's body had changed a little, but he didn't know where the change had occurred. He was very confused at this moment. Su Yao ignored him for the time being, silently feeling the sudden changes in his body. Sunlight is constantly absorbed by him, filling the void with light energy. When the light energy in his body was filled, Su Yao silently sensed it. When the black particles reached level 3, he found that the energy in his body reached a level where he could use his level 2 abilities more than 70 times. Almost half the size. Su Yao raised his hand, and under Venom's surprised gaze, he fired level 3 black particles toward the ground. Black particle experience +1. Black waves appeared on his fingers, and then a group of black particles the size of an adult's fist appeared on his fingers. With a whooshing sound, the black particles quickly rushed towards the ground. The next second, a 24-meter deep hole the size of a fist appeared on the ground. Venom looked surprised. The corners of Su Yao's mouth raised slightly. Not bad, the power increase is not bad. How can we say that when black particles hit people in the past, as long as they did not hit the vital point and they were well prepared and sought medical treatment in time, there was still some possibility of survival, but now with black particles the size of a fist, the probability of survival is extremely small. In addition to hitting the limbs, torso or head, it is basically certain that the person is dead. After all, no one can survive with a fist-sized bloody hole in his chest, abdomen, or head. Unless that person has Wolverine's self-healing factor. However, how many people in this world have the ability to heal themselves? It can be said that black particles have now become an extremely lethal ability. After hitting the target, there is no need to hit the target, unlike before. If you don't do last hitting, the opponent may not die. If you do last hit, it's a waste of energy, and it seems like the gain outweighs the gain when facing a bunch of enemies. But, after sensing the consumed light energy, Su Yao shook his head, with a hint of helplessness on his face. Just that blow just now consumed a lot of the light energy in his body. A rough estimate is that if you use level 3 black particles, you can probably use them more than 30 times. It seems that Quellen won't be able to get rid of me for a while. Unless you can obtain more abilities, or upgrade more abilities, you can forcefully increase the light energy in your body. Su Yao shook his head helplessly. After experimenting with the black particles, he was about to sense the impact of the increase in light energy in his body on the sunlight, when the sound from the venom rang out. Su, did I see it wrong? Why is the thing you released so big? The range has also been improved a lot. Venom felt incredible, almost thinking it was an illusion. Can practice improve this much? He said he couldn't understand. Ahem, you got it wrong. Su Yao coughed twice and said calmly. Really? Venom's black face was full of confusion. While Venom was confused, Su Yao raised his head and glanced above his head. The sun had almost set, and the weak sunlight illuminated the sky red. The next second, the light energy in his body was reduced. Experience of sunshine +1. Suddenly, within a range of about 25 meters, the glowing red sunlight was slightly distorted. Su Yao quickly stopped his movements to prevent the light energy from being drained from his body. While absorbing the weak sunlight to replenish the missing light energy, Su Yao thought, did it only rise about 5 meters? He shook his head, a little disappointed. This improvement was only average, not meeting his expectations at all. Originally, he was thinking that it would be enough to raise it to about 40 or 50 meters, but it seems that he really thought too much. In the final analysis, this is just a slight improvement in the quality of light energy in the body, and the increase in the total amount of light energy brings about a slight increase in range. It seems that to really increase the range, you need to upgrade the sun exposure to level 3. Su Yao shook his head and could only take his time. Of course, other abilities will also increase a lot when they reach level 3, which is better than nothing. Continuing to improve will also be a big improvement. What's the next improvement? The sun is shining. He was meditating here, and Venom next to him was already stunned. Is it my imagination? The sunlight seemed to be distorted in a large area just now. Venom said in surprise. Su Yao said casually, is there any? Maybe it's your illusion. Illusion. Venom was stunned. Is this really an illusion? Didn't Su see it? At this moment, he wondered if there was something wrong with his perception. First, the thing Su launched was much larger, and then he felt that the sunlight was distorted. Venom looked confused. Ahem. Su Yao coughed dryly and focused on improving his abilities next time. The next ability is to choose the rebound shield. Su Yao thought about it carefully. Although Sunshine is in great need of upgrading, it requires too much energy and time. With this time, it can improve several third-level abilities. Of course, the most important thing is the current lack of defensive capabilities. There are a lot of offensive capabilities but very little defensive capabilities. You might be killed by an enemy sneak attack if you are not careful. The ability of the rebound shield is not bad, at least it is good at defending against modern bullets. Not only can it reflect bullets, but it can also withstand energy attacks, but I have never had the chance to try it. If this ability is upgraded to level 3, the defense range will be greatly increased, and then there will be no need to use 2 rebound shields at once during combat. After taking a look at the sky and feeling the recovering light energy in his body, Su Yao did not continue practicing and turned around to leave. The sun sets and the moon rises, the moon sets and the sun rises. Light energy +1. Light energy +1. There were no accidents, and Su Yao spent the night peacefully. When he got up early in the morning, he continued to practice his abilities. Rebound shield experience +1. Rebound shield experience +1. It's evening. Ability. Rebound shield 241 500ths level 2. Time passed quickly, and soon another day passed. After consuming some energy in his body, he successfully raised the rebound shield to level 3 before the sun set. A beep sounds. Ability. Rebound shield 0.001 level 3. Sensing the changes in his body, a smile appeared on Su Yao's face. Rebound shield experience +1. With the use of the rebound shield, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The range of the rebound shield had indeed increased significantly. As soon as he deployed it, the rebound shield blocked everything in front of him. It can be said that as long as you are careful about the sides and release the rebound shield in time, you don't have to worry about defense. Of course, this means before the energy is exhausted. If it is exhausted, even he will have to capsize. At this moment, the confidence in his heart increased a lot. At the same time, because the rebound shield was used relatively covertly, Venom didn't notice anything this time. He just watched him practice his ability blankly, not understanding the meaning of doing so. During this process, Venom kept urging him to have a big fight, saying that he hadn't bitten anyone for a long time. Su Yao was speechless for a moment, ignored Venom's request, and directly focused on the sunshine. Logically speaking, he should upgrade other abilities first, but he just couldn't help it. Compared with improving the sunshine, the improvement of other abilities is really not worth mentioning. Anyway, we have black particles for attack and a rebound shield for defense, which is basically enough now. With anticipation, he waited for dawn the next day. Night falls and an hour passes. With the help of Venom's keen sense, he was not disturbed and successfully spent another safe night. The sky is slightly bright. Staring at the gloomy sky above his head, covered with dark clouds, Su Yao frowned slightly. Light energy +1. Although he could still absorb sunlight, his speed suddenly slowed down. Unlucky. Su Yao sighed. But I understand that it has been sunny for several days, so it is quite normal for it to rain. Light energy +1. It would be great if I could fly above the clouds. Su Yao shook his head, his desire for flying rising in his heart. I don't know, when the unlocking progress is 85%, will the ability to float and fly be unlocked? At this moment, he was even more looking forward to it. When the sun shines and the upgrade is completed, increase the unlocking progress. While absorbing the sunshine, Su Yao made do with practicing the sunshine. Experience of sunshine +1. A soft pale golden light appeared on his body, shocking the idle Venom. What is this? At this moment, Venom was filled with confusion. He found that he really didn't understand this host named Su well enough. How long had it been before he had another inexplicable ability? Glow. What is the use of this ability? Venom surrounded the young man in front of him, trying not to laugh at him, and asked, Su, are you going to be a light bulb? Suddenly Venom thought of something. Oh, you look so radiant, you look a bit like the Lord and God that humans talk about. Su Yao shook his head and concentrated on practicing sunshine. Experience of sunshine +1. Experience of sunshine +1. Sunshine experience +1, comma. When Su Yao was practicing in the sun early in the morning, there was also action in experimental base No. 23. 3 prison guards dressed in black walked slowly outside a cell. This prison cell is very special. It is surrounded by an empty space. Not only are there no other prisoners, but even the iron railings are much thicker and seem to have been specially reinforced. They walked outside the iron bars, quickly opened the cell door, and walked towards the figure locked by several chains inside. Number 5, wake up. Noticing the person coming, Number 5 raised his head. He was very pale, tall and thin, dressed in white clothes, and looked at people with a very calm look. Follow us. Unlocking the chains on his body, the 3 of them led him towards the last prison cell. Footsteps sounded slowly in the silent corridor. A group of 4 people quickly arrived at the cell where Number 1 was imprisoned. Looking at this prison cell, which was no less strict than his own, or even more strict, a strong fear flashed through Number 5's eyes. Even he is also very afraid of the people inside. Not only because the people inside are powerful, but also because the other party has the title of mutant nemesis. Thinking of pulse interference, a look of disgust flashed across Number 5's eyes. The 4 of them looked inside. A middle-aged man who looked about 2 meters tall, extremely burly, and whose whole body seemed to be made of brown metal was lying on the white iron bed with his eyes closed. Hearing the footsteps, Number 1 opened his eyes and looked over. Number 1, there is a task that the base needs you to do. The leading prison guard, Marco, opened the cell door and walked over to Number 1 to help him unchain. As the chains came off, Number 1 stretched his body, a ferocious look flashed across his face, and he said in a rough voice, Mission. Is there a task that I need to do? What mission is worth my while? Looking at the prison guards, he had a faint look of disdain on his face, feeling that they were making a fuss and wanted him to take action on even the smallest things. And, you want to bring Number 5 with you? There was a hint of anger on Number 1's metal face, feeling humiliated. Marco glanced at him and said, The enemy is very difficult, a powerful mutant, and this is the order of the base commander Alessandro. Hearing that the enemy was very difficult, especially the mutants, Number 1 didn't care anymore, and looked a little irritable, so he would sneer and taunt. However, when he heard the name Alessandro, the sarcastic expression on his face stopped and turned into respect. Not only him, but Number 5 next to him also had a similar expression. Marco smiled, turned around and walked out with a few people. They walked all the way out and past the area where ordinary prisoners were. In an instant, the prisoners who were still talking stopped talking, and the scene became so quiet that you could barely hear a pin drop. It's Number 1 and Number 5. Looking at Number 1, who was dressed in metallic luster, and Number 5, who was calm and indifferent, the prisoners remained silent, with a faint flash of fear in their eyes. No one knows the horror of these 2 monsters better than them. They still remember that one time a strong black man wanted to tease Number 5, but Number 5 was restrained by the mutant controller and used energy shock forcefully. The red energy covered the man in an instant. In less than 2 seconds, the man turned into black coal and fell to the ground, dying miserably. Not to mention, this number 5 also has the ability to heal himself at super speed. He is like an invincible cockroach. No one can be his opponent. Number 1 was more direct. He punched the person who offended him. Blood and limbs flew everywhere, scaring countless people to the point of peeing. And no matter who they are after that, as long as they provoke them, no one will end well. Therefore, facing these two people, both ordinary prisoners and mutants are afraid of them, not only because of their strength, but also because of their cruelty and ruthlessness, killing without blinking an eye. Glancing at these people, number 1's eyes flashed with sarcasm, and he looked down on them, or in other words, he looked down on anyone ranked below him. After they left, the prisoners started talking. What are those 3 people doing with number 1 and no. 5? Have you forgotten about the 37th? The prisoners who were still a little confused at first suddenly realized it, and then started to gloat in pity. Number 37 is really over this time. No one can be a match for those 2 monsters. Yes, even if number 37 is good, it's over this time. Oh, I hope number 37 can survive. Even the freckled young man who had talked to Suyao before shook his head now. God bless you. At this moment, some people have begun to bet on whether number 37 will be brought back with their limbs broken or whether they will die. In short, no one thinks that number 1 and number 5 will fail. Walking out of the experimental base, number 5 frowned slightly and asked, "Where are you taking us to find the mission target you mentioned?" Marco smiled slightly and said, "It's hard to find position 37. The guy keeps changing positions. We need to wait for a mutant codenamed Hound. But this Hound is on a mission and can't come yet. It will take some time to wait." As he spoke, he continued to speak while leading the way. "Now I'm going to take you to capture another mutant, so that you can get used to each other, and even learn to cooperate, so that you don't make mistakes when dealing with that 37. When they heard about the cooperation, both number 1 and number 5 were a little disapproving. They believed that they could solve number 37 by themselves without cooperation at all. And, number 37. Number 1 was slightly angry and said, "Are you so serious that you just want us to catch the so-called number 37? When he heard the ranking of number 37, he knew the strength of no. 37. Thinking about it, there was a faint look of disdain on his face. Not only him, but number 5 on the side also looked in disbelief, thinking that he had heard wrongly. Number 37, is it worth them? Marco glanced at them and explained, "When another mutant is captured, I will explain it to you, and by the way, I will show you the information video of 37. Remember, that number 37 is not easy to deal with. He is not as simple as you think." Hearing what he said, number 1 and number 5 still looked indifferent. They even thought he was making a fuss and asked them to watch some information video. It was simply ridiculous. Doesn't this person know the power of the 2 of them? The 5 people got into the car and drove away. Half an hour later, they stopped the car outside the gate of a house. After getting out of the car, Marco helped number 1 and the 2 unlock the mutant controller. After that, they walked towards the house where the target was. Bang bang bang. After a knock on the door, a teenage voice came from the house. "Who?" With a click, the door was opened. A head with blonde hair emerged from the crack in the door. Fabian, who looked very childish, looked at a few people in confusion, and then his expression suddenly changed. Whether it was number 1's ordinary metal body or the prison guard uniforms worn by the Marcos, they all made him feel uneasy. Boom. Marco held the door that was about to close with his hands and said in a serious voice, "We received a call from the public saying that Mr. Fabian, you have used superpowers." Before he could finish his words, Fabian's expression changed when he realized their purpose, and then he used his ability. With a bang, invisible power surged out of him and rushed towards the 5 people outside the door. The expressions on the faces of the 3 prison guards in Mako suddenly changed, and before they even had time to shoot, they flew backwards and fell onto the lawn a few meters away. Number 5 was in the same situation. He was accidentally hit by telekinesis and flew several meters away. Along the way, he suffered some scratches, but he was back to normal within a few seconds. As for number 1, he didn't even move at all. The luster of metal flashed across his body, and he stood still in place, like an iron pillar, not moving at all. You. After trying a few more times, Fabian's expression suddenly changed. He found that his telepathy was powerless against the other party. Number 1 smiled ferociously. Little thing. Fabian was panicked and immediately looked at the firearms scattered on the ground. 3 black pistols floated together, and then the muzzles of the guns were turned and pointed at Number 1, as if they were about to shoot in the next second. But before Fabian could control the firearm and fire, Number 1's actions interrupted him. There was a yellow light in Number 1's eyes, and a strange noise echoed around, and then bang bang bang, several pistols lost their telekinesis and instantly fell to the ground. My ability. Fabian looked in disbelief, looking at the metal man with yellow eyes in fear. Ah! With a blush on his face, Fabian wanted to use his telekinesis, but no matter how many times he tried, he failed. Under the interference of an inexplicable force, he directly lost the ability to control his telekinesis. Number 1 looked disdainful, grabbed the clothes on Fabian's chest, and lifted him up very easily. Waste. With that said, he ignored Fabian's struggle and threw Fabian directly in front of Marco. Okay, I'll leave it to you. It's really boring. Number 1 turned and walked towards the car. Fear flashed in Number 5's eyes, and he slowly followed him. Marco looked surprised and sighed. I was still thinking about asking them to cooperate. It seems, Number 1's ability can really restrain mutants. While shaking his head, he walked to the car with the desperate Fabian. On the way, Fabian saw the metal man walking away and tried to use his mutant abilities. But to his despair, the metal man's ability had an unexpectedly wide range of influence, and he still couldn't use it. Arriving in the car, Marco handcuffed Fabian's hands and put a mutant controller on his neck. Fabian gave up struggling and desperately accepted the reality. At this time, Marco looked at Number 1, whose eyes returned to normal. I underestimated you. After apologizing, Marco turned to Crowley and said, show Number 1 and Number 5 the information video of No. 37. Crowley nodded, took out a silver tablet from his seat, and handed it to Number 1. Number 1 and Number 5 were a little indifferent, feeling that it was unnecessary, but they were still idle, so they turned their attention to the tablet. As the video played on the tablet, Number 1 and Number 5 had a look of surprise in their eyes. Even Fabian, who looked desperate, now had a look of astonishment in his eyes. As the tablet played, the abilities and battle scenes of Number 37 came into view. Whether it was the spatial movement that disappeared instantly, or the emission of black particles, or the emission of blue energy pillars, or the rebounding bullets, everything surprised them. Watching the video, the boy was surrounded by fire and killed many people one after another. Fabian's eyes showed admiration. As for Number 1 and Number 5, there was also surprise in their eyes. Is this Number 37? Number 5, who rarely spoke, asked with a surprised look on his face, this guy has so many abilities. Intrinsic. Marco nodded. Seeing his response, the surprise in the eyes of Number 1 and Number 5 became stronger, and at the same time, a touch of jealousy arose in their hearts. Even they have gone through many experiments and only survived by chance to have the abilities they have now. Why is this Number 37? Tisk, what a lucky boy. Number 1 clicked his tongue, and then his face returned to calm, and he said nonchalantly, it's useless to have more abilities. As long as he touches me, he will be finished. Not to mention having the ability to pulse interference, even if he didn't, he wouldn't be afraid of this so-called Number 37. Number 5 on the side also had a similar expression. After being surprised, he became indifferent and agreed with what Number 1 said. Although he can't stand Number 1, he has to say that the opponent's ability is so powerful that there is no mutant that cannot be restrained. And even without Number 1, relying on his own energy impact, he can still make that kid kneel down and beg for mercy. At this moment, he was already looking forward to meeting Number 37, so that he could teach him a lesson. At this time, Marco shook his head and said, although 37's limit has been tested and his abilities are also demonstrated in this video, you still have to be careful. After all, Number 37 has many abilities. If you are not careful, you may also be injured. You still need to be careful. Finally, he said, you can get used to it at the base during this period. Once the mutant hound is deployed, we will set out to capture No. 37. Fabian on the side fell into silence, feeling sympathy for the number 37 in their mouths. I don't know when this number 37 will be caught. Don't blame him for thinking this way, this metal man is really too strong, what a ability. Thinking about it, he glanced at the other faceless person next to him, and felt even more sympathy for No. 37. Needless to say, this other one is definitely not easy to deal with either. As they rushed towards experimental base number 23, the internet was also turbulent at this time. In order to appease netizens, the Beautiful and Irina specially held a live broadcast. At this moment, under the gaze of hundreds of thousands of viewers, she was wearing a black and white dress, with a charming smile on her face, and she explained softly. Viewers, don't worry. According to the secret information I got from Irina, the mutant boy will be caught soon. As she spoke, the smile on her face became even more charming. It is said that the relevant departments sent their secret weapons this time. As for what the secret weapon is, I'm going to give it a try here first. Everyone just needs to know that the boy will never be able to escape this time. Irina was all smiles. If there is any latest news, this station will report it to you as soon as possible. After that, Irina ended the live show. However, it was over on her side, and netizens started talking enthusiastically after hearing her words. Secret weapon. Irina looks very confident. She probably won't fail this time. I'm really curious. Irina is so sure. He can't escape that fugitive, haha. Agree. Netizens were talking a lot and had expectations in their hearts. They can't wait to hear Irina announce that the mutant fugitive has been caught. This time, I don't know if it will be broadcast live. Netizens are curious and expecting. While ordinary people were discussing when the fugitive would be defeated by a secret weapon and captured, the mutants who saw the news and some of Su Yao's acquaintances became worried. In the dark underground passage. This little guy. Wolverine Logan put down the cigar in his hand, his eyebrows knitted together, and he felt a little worried. Chris next to him sighed and said, I hope he can be safe. Otto and Valentine looked at each other. Do we need to help him? Otto raised his hand and said. Valentine shook his head, rejected his idea, and said, how can we help? We don't even know where he is. Now I can only pray that he will survive this danger. When Chris heard this, he frowned and said, the news revealed by Irina must not be false. The person who captured Sue this time must have prepared a secret weapon. This Irina's tone is very confident, Sue is very likely. He opened his mouth to say something, but in the end he didn't say it, but the people next to him understood what he meant. Thinking about it, it was right. Judging from the strength that Sue showed not long ago, he really wasn't invincible. He only had many ways to deal with him. Poisoning, sniper rifle assassination, a group of well-armed people surrounding and killing, and weapons targeting the X gene. Just by thinking about it, they could think of many ways to restrain Sue, not to mention the methods that Irina could call a secret weapon, which must be even more terrifying. At this time, Logan spoke. Hey, that little guy is in danger. We can't do nothing. We should look for him and try to rescue him. Chris nodded and expressed his willingness to go out and look for it. Otto and Valentine hesitated for a long time, then took one last look at them and chose to agree to the matter. After several people made preparations, they immediately walked out of the sewers and started searching, trying to find Sue before the government people found him. In addition to Wolverine Logan and others who saw Irina's live broadcast, the bald Professor X who was far away in X Academy also said something to Cyclops Scott with a serious face. Scott, has the Omega mutant been found? Scott, who was standing aside, shook his head. After hearing this, Professor. At this time, Cyclops Scott couldn't hold back and asked doubtfully, Professor, is that Omega mutant really that important? We must find him. Professor, the power of Omega-level mutants cannot be evaluated based on common sense. When Scott heard this, his face was a little shocked. Infinite level. Are Omega mutants really that strong? Is there such a big difference from level 4? He was surprised here. Professor X, Charles, sighed and said worriedly, find it as soon as possible. After speaking, he looked at Scott. Scott, just try your best to find the Omega mutants. Now you need to help another child first. When Scott heard this, he instantly understood what the professor meant and nodded. Professor, I will lead people to rescue that child. I'll call Chin and the others. After saying that, he walked out of the office and went to find Chin and Storm. Professor. More than half an hour later, Cyclops, who had found all the people, got on the flying fighter plane and took the people to fly towards the target city. There's action on the X-Men's side, and there's also action on Magneto's Eric in the Brotherhood of Mutants. Eric turned to look at Mystique and asked, Riven, why haven't you found the person you asked to find? The slender, blue-skinned Mystique Raven shook her head. That kid is so good at running away, I really can't find him. She had infiltrated the government department, but they couldn't even find anyone, let alone find it on her own. After hearing Mystique Raven's explanation, Eric frowned and was not satisfied with her answer. Keep an eye on the people in those departments to see when they go to find that kid. If necessary, you can sneak in. Eric ordered. Mystique Raven nodded, turned around and prepared to leave. But before she could leave, Magneto Eric's voice rang behind her. By the way, where's the Omega mutant I asked you to find? Mystique Raven shook her head. Magneto Eric's frown deepened. Seeing her disappear, Eric suddenly laughed. Old friend, let's see who can find the Omega mutant first. While the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants were taking action, Eddie, who was on the run with Venom, saw this news soon after. Eddie didn't think much about it and forgot about it. In addition to these people, Heidi and the three people who had been approached by underground organizations together with Su Yao and had some interactions with him also knew the news because they were always paying attention to his news. At this moment, they were looking at each other. After they parted ways, the three of them asked some mutants what the ultimate threat meant. It's just that many people don't know what it is. However, in the end, they also had some guesses, guessing that they were most likely to be level 4, or even level 5 or even Omega level mutants. Level 5 and Omega levels may be quite small. They were shocked. Facing the news that Sue was being hunted, they felt a little complicated and didn't know whether they should help their friend. At noon, the sky was gloomy and covered with dark clouds, as if a storm was coming. Experience of sunshine +1. Experience of sunshine +1. At this moment, Su Yao was practicing hard to shine under the sun. Ability. Sunshine 11/500ths level 2. Glancing at the panel, he secretly complained, this weather. If it hadn't been for the weather, the progress I'd made after practicing all morning wouldn't have been just like this. Phew. A slightly moist wind blew, and heavy rain fell from the sky. Su Yao frowned, temporarily stopped practicing the sun-drenched movements, and walked under the building to hide from the rain. It wasn't until night that the heavy rain stopped. Ability. Sunshine 19/500ths level 2. After taking a look at the panel, Su Yao shook his head, looking forward to tomorrow's sun. Time passed and soon the next day came. Sunny. As the sun shines on the body, prompts sound. Light energy +1. Light energy +1. Just as he was practicing when the sun was shining, the person they were waiting for was also waiting at base 23. Base 23. Finally come. Number 1 and number 5, who were already waiting a little impatiently, looked at the person who was being brought in the distance. Prison guards Marco, Captain Kenny, and Captain George were among them. In addition, there were more than a dozen fully armed soldiers, and among them was the Hound. This man was wearing gray clothes, had yellow hair, and had an ordinary face. He looked about 30 years old and looked very ordinary. Is he the Hound? Number 1 asked impatiently as others approached. Captain Kenny next to the Hound nodded and said, yes, he is the Hound. As he spoke, he took out a pillow that the mutant boy had used, and handed it to the Hound. Under the gaze of number 1 and number 5, the Hound took the pillow and sniffed it carefully, and then began to look for something around the base. Soon, he was walking straight in one direction, and seemed to have locked on to the traces of scent molecules left behind by his target. Seeing that the Hound had determined its direction, Captain George and Captain Kenny secretly breathed a sigh of relief. They were also afraid that the heavy rain last night would destroy the traces. They didn't expect that mutants were mutants and could still find people by following the traces after so long. Everyone got into the car and followed the Hound. The Hound seemed to be really like a hound, running very fast in front. Time passed, and soon more than half an hour passed. Suddenly, the Hound running in front slowly stopped. The area ahead is very remote, and even the houses on the streets look dirty and old. Close to where number 37 is hiding. After getting off the car, Captain George's eyes lit up and excitement appeared on his face. The hound nodded. I found it, ha ha ha, number 37, let's see how you run away this time. Captain Kenny next to him laughed ferociously. Captain George also sneered, number 37, just follow us back and do the experiments. Everyone started making arrangements. Click, click, 5 black sentinel spiders crawled out of the safe, their mechanical eyes glowing red. At the same time, prison guard Mako led 2 people towards a tall building in the distance. They will monitor the target from a high altitude and use drones to lock the target's location. If they find traces of the other party, they will immediately tell George and others the exact location where the target escaped through the liaison device. Originally, there was no need to do this when there were hounds around, but I was afraid that something might happen to the other party, so I did this just in case. After taking a look at the remaining 10 or so people, number 5 said nonchalantly, leave this battle to us. You can watch the show or assist. Captain George and Captain Kenny nodded, feeling very confident. They were discussing here, and Su Yao also noticed something unusual at this time. Su, be careful. Venom suddenly emerged from his right hand, and he looked into the distance with a solemn expression. Su Yao frowned slightly and became wary. He knew that Venom's perception was very keen and he must have sensed something. Rebound shield experience +1. An invisible rebound shield appeared in front. Su Yao cautiously approached the outside and looked into the distance. The next second, his expression changed slightly. A group of people in familiar clothes stood in the distance, and one of them pointed at this place, seeming to say that the target was inside. Space transfer experience +1. Space transfer experience +1. Under Venom's blank gaze, his figure disappeared. However, what made Su Yao's face darken was that no matter where he was hiding, people in the distance always seemed to be able to find his location. Su Yao knew that if he didn't get rid of these people, he would never even think about leaving. The next second, he maintained the rebound shield and walked out. A clearing in the distance. Under the gaze of a pair of eyes, a mysterious figure wearing black clothes and his face covered by a black hood slowly walked out. You're finally out. Captain Kenny laughed ferociously and said, let's see how you run this time. At this time, a faint smile appeared on Metal Number 1's face. Are you the waste number 37 they call you? Number 5's expression was very dull. At this time, Captain Kenny sneered again, do you know who they are? Compared with them, you are nothing. This time you just follow us back to the laboratory, ha ha ha. He laughed heartily, relieving himself from the grievances he had felt over and over again. This time, I can finally give this guy a good look. Captain Kenny was in a very good mood. Captain George on the side was in a similar mood, with a smile on his face. Number 5 has super speed, self-healing and energy shock. Number 1 has a metal body, enhanced strength, enhanced 5 senses, and most importantly, pulse interference. How to deal with this guy? He sneered. After a while, even if number 37 wanted to run away, he couldn't. After losing his ability, he is just an ordinary person on the 37th. How can he resist? Su Yao tilted his head and said, really? Ha! Seeing that he was unrepentant, Captain George sneered, soon you will see how powerful they are, and you will be miserable. After he finished speaking, number 5 stood up and said calmly and indifferently, okay, let me play with you first. Number 1 glanced at him, crossed his arms, and said nothing. Although he despised number 5, it was more than enough to deal with. No. 37. I'm afraid that number 37 will die if they meet each other, right? Captain George and others next to him were also worried. They were worried that number 5 would take action without knowing the importance of the attack and let number 37 die like this. With everyone watching, number 5 took action. In an instant, terrifying red energy rose from number 5, even distorting the surrounding light. The air waves swept across, and George and others next to him were forced to retreat, with shock on their faces. What terrifying energy! As soon as this thought came to my mind, the next second red energy several meters high burst out, like a huge wave, sweeping towards No. 37. Boom! Wherever it passed, the ground was wiped out inch by inch. Under everyone's shocked gaze, red energy flooded Su Yao. It's over on the 37th. This idea came to everyone's mind. Seeing number 5's red energy engulfing number 37, at this moment, no one thought he could survive. Number 5's eyes were dull, as if he had long been accustomed to it. Number 1 shook his head. Captain George sneered, "I told you to come back to the laboratory with us, why didn't you listen?" Captain Kenny felt a little regretful and complained that some of number 5's shots were too heavy. "What a pity. It seems you can't run away this time, ha ha ha." However, when the red energy swept through, something happened that shocked them. The red light gradually disappeared, and the young man's figure appeared on the spot safe and sound, as if he was unscathed and nothing had happened. "What? Number 37 is not dead? Impossible." Captain Kenny stared in disbelief at Su Yao, who was standing there safe and sound. How could it be okay? Captain George couldn't believe it, and the sneer on his face froze. Number 5's calm expression was no longer there, and his eyes suddenly widened due to boredom. Number 1 looked surprised. How so? Just when they couldn't believe it, they heard the young man not far away say calmly, "Give it back to you." The next second, something horrified them happened. Boom! Huge red energy appeared in front of Su Yao and rushed towards No. 5. Number 5 was in disbelief and had no time to think about it. He hurriedly used red energy and moved forward to resist. Boom! There was a flash of red light, and when everything calmed down, Captain Kenny and others' eyes widened in disbelief. Number 5's whole body was charred, with severe burns on the outside. Most of his clothes were carbonized and disappeared, and the whole person looked miserable. I don't know if it was because I reacted too late or because of something else, but number 5 didn't completely block it. However, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that the number 37 in front of me can actually use the ability of No. 5. This is impossible. Captain Kenny couldn't accept it and shouted, "How did you do it? How could you have this ability? Is it possible that your previous performances were not your limit?" He couldn't believe it. Next to him, Captain George, number 1, and a dozen soldiers were all in disbelief. This number 37 has too many abilities, right? Others were shocked, number 1 and number 5, with uncontrollable jealousy in their eyes. Why can he have so many abilities despite being a mutant? Unfair. However, although the opponent has many abilities, it does not mean that they are afraid. Under Su Yao's surprised gaze, number 5's carbonized body began to change. The muscles squirm and recover one by one, the dark carbon tissue falls off, and the skin is rapidly formed. Soon, number 5, who seemed to have shed his skin, appeared in everyone's sight. Is this super speed self-healing? It's really powerful. Captain Kenny and others had strange expressions on their faces. Judging from number 5's previous injuries, ordinary people would probably die before the wound could become infected. Number 5 didn't even get there for a minute, and he actually recovered. What a terrifying resilience this is. No wonder this number 5 is called a monster. A dozen soldiers showed fear in their eyes. If he keeps recovering like this, who can beat him, who can kill him? Captain George sneered and said, "You can't kill number 5. Did you see that? Stop struggling. You can't resist. If you resist, you will only end up in despair." At this moment, others also regained their confidence. With number 5's super speed healing and number 1's ability, what can number 37 do to resist? At this time, number 5's eyes flashed red. "You pissed me off." "Really?" Su Yao asked calmly. Under everyone's expectant gaze, red energy emerged from number 5's body again. He stretched out his hand and red energy bombs appeared. Boom! 5 threw it out. With everyone watching, the boy whose face was covered by a black hood raised his right hand and swatted at the red energy ball, as if swatting an annoying fly. Boom! Click! The sound of breaking glass was heard. Under the stunned gazes of everyone, including Venom, the red energy ball flew back at an unimaginable speed. Ah! Number 5 screamed. The red energy ball hit him and sent him flying backwards. The figure flashed past, and with a bang, he hit the wall not far away. As the walls cracked, everyone could faintly hear the sound of bones cracking. Looking at the embarrassed number 5, and then at Su Yao who lightly swatted away the red energy ball as if swatting a fly, everyone's faces were dull. What's going on here? How so? They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Number 5 is like an ant, unable to stop being beaten. This number 37. At this time, number 1, who was covered in rocky metal color, stood up. Glancing at number 5, his rough face twitched, and he said impatiently, "Number 5, you are really getting better and better. You can't even deal with a child. What a waste." In the distance, number 5, who was lying on the ground, got up with a look of resignation on his face. Number 1's yellow eyes turned to Su Yao, with a sinister smile on his rough face. "Boy, don't think you can win by beating number 5 into such a mess. I'm different from him. He is a loser, and I." He gave a grim laugh. The next moment, under everyone's excited and expectant gaze, his eyes flashed with yellow light. "It's pulse interference." Captain George and others were refreshed, with smiles on their faces. Number 1's eyes flashed with yellow light while he smiled ferociously. "Under my pulse interference, you won't be able to use your mutant abilities at all. How are you? Do you feel like you have power in your body, but you can't use it?" "Ha ha ha." Number 1 laughed. At this time, number 5, who was deliberately shielded from pulse interference in the distance, sneered in a low voice. A red light emitted from his body, and a crimson ball of red energy appeared in his right hand. The next second, the red energy ball was violently thrown away by him, flying straight towards Su Yao in the distance. Boom! Red energy is flying in the air, and the surrounding light is distorted. Seeing this scene, the soldiers perked up. Captain George had a sneer on his face, Captain Kenny raised the corners of his mouth, and number 1 glanced at them with a look of indifference. However, the next second, something unexpected happened to all of them. Click, the sound of breaking glass sounded. Then, the red energy ball that distorted the light changed its direction and rushed straight towards the chest of number 1, who looked indifferent. Boom! Red light exploded, and number 1 was violently knocked away. The figure flew in the air and hit the wall not far away. Captain George and others had dull faces. Su Yao tilted his head and said, "What pulse? Everyone, go to bed early and update during the day." Looking at number 1 who was knocked out by the energy impact, and then looking at the young man standing there, everyone's faces were filled with disbelief. Pulse jamming failed. This is impossible. Captain George was in disbelief. Whether it is him or Kenny, or number 1 and number 5, one thing is very clear, that is, no one can use their abilities normally under the interference of pulses. This is the conclusion reached after countless experiments and battles. However, now, the picture that appeared in front of them broke their conclusion. Under pulse interference, number 37 could still use mutant abilities. Captain George looked in disbelief, and the others were not much better. This is not common sense. Number 5 couldn't hold it in any longer and asked directly, "Number 1, did you not use pulse interference on him?" Others thought the same thing and looked at number 1. Number 1 got up slightly embarrassed. Judging from his metallic body, it could be seen that he was not injured. Looking at his body, everyone couldn't help but marvel at his body's defensive power. At this time, number 1 replied angrily, "I used it. I don't know what happened. This kid." He looked at Su Yao in confusion and murmured, "Why does the pulse interference fail? This shouldn't be the case. There is no ability that I can't control." Su Yao glanced at him. Indeed, this guy's pulse interference did not fail. Just when this guy used pulse interference, he clearly felt that the energy absorption failed. Even if the sun shines on the body, it will not absorb any energy. However, in contrast, he unexpectedly discovered that this person's pulse interference was ineffective against the imitation ability, and the Orochi's abilities could still be used. At the same time, the light energy in his body has not disappeared, which is why he can still react. He secretly sighed, the abilities of mutants are really all kinds of weird. If the imitation wasn't so special, he might have been tricked this time and captured without a fight. Thinking of this, his eyes turned slightly cold when he looked at number 1 and others, and then he changed his mind. He didn't intend to delay it any longer. Just when he was about to take action, Captain Kenny, who was not far away, sneered. "Number 37, you are really surprising me more and more. You can actually use your abilities under the pulse interference of no 1. What secret do you have and why are you so special?" As he said that, he shook his head. "But forget it, so what if you can resist number 1's pulse interference? You can't kill number 1 and number 5, and what will be waiting for you in the end will only be a cold laboratory. And you are well prepared this time. You will never run away." There was a sneer on his face. Captain George next to him also sneered, "Follow us back to the laboratory, haha." The dozen or so soldiers beside him couldn't help but regain their confidence. As for number 1 and number 5, their expressions calmed down now. Just like Captain George and Captain Kenny said, even if this number 37 is a little special, it won't make any waves. Under the absolute power, no matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. "Kneel on the ground, kid." Number 1 laughed ferociously and rushed over with a big stride. The wind howls. Every time number 1 takes a step, there will be heavy footprints left under his feet, revealing his strength at this moment. Red energy emerged from number 5's body again. At the same time, 5 black sentinel spiders also moved. Just when Kenny and others were full of expectations, and number 5 and number 1 were full of murderous intent, preparing to join forces to kill the kid not far away, something happened. Experience of sunshine +1. It's all in vain. The light above the head is blazing. In an instant, a faint light enveloped everything around him. Number 1, who was running, was startled and slowly stopped. Number 5 also stopped what he was doing. Captain George and others looked around. What happened? This light is. As soon as they were doubtful, they felt a sharp pain in their bodies, and some soldiers howled miserably. "Ah, my body." Everyone endured the pain and looked crazily at the people around them, and then their eyes became glazed over. Under the faint light, everything on them began to disappear. Whether it was clothing, firearms, or skin and flesh, they all turned into particles, and then the particles returned to nothingness and disappeared. Looking at this horrific scene, no one could calm down at this moment, and everyone had fear in their eyes. "How so? It's you. How is that possible?" Suddenly, Captain Kenny turned his head and stared at the boy not far away. "How did you do that, and what are these lights? What ability is this?" He couldn't believe it, and so did everyone else. "What exactly are these lights? Is this the ability that number 37 possesses?" "How so?" Someone went crazy and shot Su Yao, but unfortunately it had no effect. Moreover, at this moment, both number 5 and number 1 have begun to decompose. Even if number 5 is covered in red energy, it can't stop this scene. The metal body of number 1 actually began to decompose piece by piece. This is a capability they have never seen before. Level 5 ability. Still, everyone's face was full of horror. Unfortunately, no matter how they react, the final outcome waiting for them will not change. As particles flew all over the sky, they began to annihilate. Soon, someone fell to the ground and died. "No." At the last moment before his death, Captain Kenny roared unwillingly. "I don't want to die, no." He began to lose his mind, and babbled gibberish unwillingly and angrily. "Why do you resist? Why don't you come back to the laboratory with us? Why don't?" In the desperate cry, his whole body suddenly collapsed, turning into particles flying all over the sky, and disappeared into ashes. At the same time, Captain George was no exception. His face was full of fear, and despair filled his heart. He begged for mercy. "Spare me. Spare me." No, on the 37th. He wanted to beg for something, but unfortunately before he could finish speaking, his whole body was broken down into particles and dissipated completely. More than 10 other soldiers, including the Hound who had been watching, followed one after another. At this moment, there are only 5 sentinel spiders left in place, including number 1 and No. 5. However, the 5 sentinel robots did not last long. The black body tissues cracked and dissipated inch by inch, and eventually they dispersed into countless particles and dissipated without a trace. As for numbers 1 and 5, Su Yao turned his cold eyes away. Number 5 was enveloped in red energy, trying to block the decomposition of the light. Not to mention, this had some effect. The sunlight was blocked, and the decomposition was indeed slower, but the effect was not great. As the blocked red energy was decomposed, his body came into contact with the light, and his flesh and blood scattered into particles inch by inch. Then he quickly recovered due to super speed healing, and the two were in a slight stalemate. It's just a pity that the decomposition speed is faster than his self-healing speed, and the situation is leaning towards destruction. Number 5 looked at the young man not far away in disbelief. During the huge surge of energy, the black clothes on the young man's body fluttered loudly, giving him a sense of elegance, as if he could fly with him at any time. The terrifying momentum and light surged out from his body, as if it could stop anyone trying to get close. Number 5 stretched out his right hand with difficulty and walked step by step towards the young man not far away, trying to stop him. Unfortunately, under the shroud of light, all his efforts were in vain. His flesh and blood began to dissipate, and his bones gradually emerged. Number 1 on the other side was not much better, even worse than number 5. No matter how solid the rock-colored metal body was, it was steadily dissipating at this moment. Most of it dissipated in a short period of time, exposing a large area of bones. As the yellow blood flowed, his beating heart could still be faintly seen. With a groan of anger and unwillingness, his whole body fell to the ground. Bang! A few seconds later, his burly body also turned into particles. Number 5 stretched out his right hand with exposed bones, wanting to touch something, but in the end the movement froze. As he fell to the ground, his body quickly dissipated. At this moment, everything around me disappeared. The light gradually faded away and dimmed, and the black robe flying around Su Yao gradually subsided. When everything calmed down and the scene was quiet, there was nothing left where those people were. Silent and terrifying. After glancing at all the people who had disappeared, Su Yao felt helpless as he felt the dry light energy in his body. The power of sunlight is great, but the consumption is really exaggerated. As long as the light energy is used, it is basically gone. Fortunately, the sun above his head was still shining, which allowed the light energy in his body to quickly recover. Otherwise, he really wouldn't know what to do. In addition to insufficient light energy, he also noticed something wrong with using full sunlight this time. The red energy of number 5 can actually slightly block the power of the sun. And his self-healing ability also delays the sunshine for a long time. And number 1, when decomposing his metal body, was also much slower than ordinary people. It seems that sunshine still needs to continue to improve. Su Yao secretly shook his head. Although sunshine has the essence of Omega level, in the final analysis it is only level 2, which is still a bit lower in intensity. To have the current level of power can be considered an exaggeration. And if it's level 5, those people probably won't be able to hold on for even a second, and their whole people will turn into particles and fly into ashes. Glancing at the experience bar of Sunshine, he began to look forward to Sunshine's performance after it reached level 3. At this time, Venom suddenly emerged from his right hand. Su, you. On Venom's small head, the mouth full of sharp teeth opened wide, as if it could fit a basketball. He couldn't believe what he just saw. The young man in front of me is like a god. Don't talk yet. Su Yao ignored him for the time being, but glanced at the sky. Just when he was using sunshine, he clearly felt that something in the sky was being wiped out by sunshine. It seems like several drones. Su Yao frowned and sensed that some energy had recovered in his body, then he stepped forward and searched around. 10 minutes later, he arrived at the roof of an unfinished building. Looking at some equipment on the ground that he had not had time to clean up, Su Yao frowned tightly. Is there anyone else? Standing on the roof of the building, Su Yao Chao glanced around and found nothing suspicious. It seems those people ran away. He turned to look at Venom. Venom, can you sense suspicious people around you? Venom shook his head. Forget it. Su Yao frowned, then relaxed. It is estimated that those people can't be found, and finding people is not what he is good at. Instead of thinking too much, it is better to speed up the level of sunshine and unlock the progress. If the sunshine is increased and the unlocking progress is increased to 100%, he will be more confident even if there is danger. Su Yao turned around and left the unfinished building. As he walked, he began to think, although we haven't killed everyone, I can still breathe a sigh of relief this time. Thinking of the disgusting Captain George and Captain Kenny, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Come on, there's still that experimental base. Su Yao's eyes flashed with light. He has not forgotten who the culprit who has been chasing him is. If he was not powerful enough now, he would have killed him long ago. While he was meditating, Venom beside him couldn't bear it anymore. Recalling the previous scenes, he couldn't help but feel shocked. So what is the power? Incredible. It's like the power of God. Fear. Looking at Su in front of him, he felt that this host seemed to be filled with mist and mystery. Suddenly, Venom thought of something and said strangely, Sue, you told me a few days ago that the distortion of the sunlight that time was an illusion. He thought again that he had complained not long ago that the light coming out of Sus' body looked like a light bulb. It turns out that it's not the light bulb that has such a terrifying power. Venom was stunned. When he first faced number 1 and number 5, even he felt desperate and thought it was going to be over. Unexpectedly, the moment the light enveloped the surroundings, even he felt suffocated. That kind of power that destroyed everything made him feel as if he had really seen the Lord and God that humans talk about. Destroying everything in an understatement, just like a god. The more he thought about it, the more shocked he was. That's your fantasy. After taking a look at Venom's cute little head, Su Yao replied casually. While they were talking, 3 people were running wildly about a kilometer away. Hoo-hoo. Guard Mako ran as fast as he could. At this moment, he covered his mouth with his hands, his eyes full of fear, and he didn't dare to stop at all. The other 2 soldiers were similar. At this moment, there was only fear in their eyes, their minds were in chaos, and they were almost insane from fear. They couldn't believe what they saw not long ago. Chapter 51. Light. The light ruins everything. Recalling that not long ago, Captain George and others who had no resistance were all turned into ashes under the light, and prison guard Marco and others couldn't help but show fear in their eyes. What is that? The power of no. 37. How could there be such power? Guard Mako felt frightened. The other 2 soldiers were not much better. At this moment, there was only fear in their hearts, and they were deeply afraid of that power. Is that the power that humans can have? Just like a god. It left a deep shadow in their hearts. Whenever someone mentioned mutants in the future, they would involuntarily think of that boy and feel fear in their hearts. The kind of power that destroys everything. After running for a while, they stopped when they couldn't hold on any longer. Their hearts were beating rapidly, and after breathing for a while, they felt relieved. At the same time, their frightened spirits also calmed down. After regaining some composure, the older soldier Halo gasped and asked, Brother Marco, what should we do now? Captain George and the others are all dead. He swallowed in fear. Guard Mako took a deep breath, glanced at them, and said, report this to Base Chief Alessandro as soon as possible. Let's grab a car and go back to the base quickly to avoid being caught up by that monster. After saying this, the 2 soldiers became frightened and hurried to the road not far away, anxiously preparing to stop the car. More than half an hour later, they returned to Base 23 by car. Arriving in a hurry to Base Director Alessandro's office, Marco knocked on the door eagerly. Come in. The 3 of them hurriedly walked in. Noticing the 3 of them, especially Marco among them, Alessandro was confused. Marco, didn't you and George go to arrest No. 37? Why? Caught? He asked with interest, his face looking a little more energetic. I haven't caught that kid for so long, and now it's not too late, which is something to be happy about. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he discovered something unexpected. The faces of the 3 Marcos, who were originally normal, instantly turned pale and were filled with fear, as if they had thought of something scary. What's wrong with you? Alessandro asked doubtfully. Marco replied in fear, Sir, Captain George and the others, they are dead. Alessandro, who had a calm face, opened his eyes instantly, stood up and asked, what did you say, dead? How could they die? The 3 Marcos explained. After listening to their stories, Commander Alessandro said in disbelief, what, the light ruined everything? George and the others all died in the light and turned into dust. Alessandro looked doubtful and disbelieving. He felt that the 3 people in front of him must be crazy, or they were playing tricks on him. Otherwise, how could you say such outrageous things? Sir Alessandro, I swear to God, this is true. Marco's face was full of seriousness. We saw the light destroying everything. Even number 1 and number 5 were no exception. They all died under the power of number 37. Alessandro was shocked when he looked at the faces of the 3 people who looked like they were not lying and were still scared. Real. The kid who has always been ignored by him and thinks that having more abilities is not a threat, actually has this kind of power. So, what is the power of that light? He couldn't help but have doubts and prying thoughts in his heart, wanting to find out what kind of power that kid had. At this time, Alessandro frowned and asked, where is the pulse interference on number 1. Number 1 didn't have time to use it. Guard Mako shook his head and replied, the pulse interference has failed. What? Alessandro became more and more shocked. His face darkened. That kid has hidden himself too deeply. Is this all his power? What a scheming brat. At this moment, he wished he could catch the kid on the spot and tie him to the experimental table for experimental research. What exactly is that light? It has so much power. And why can number 37 resist the pulse interference of no 1? All this puzzled Alessandro. As for the arrest, it seems that it needs to be carefully deployed. Judging from the inexplicable power that kid possesses, it seems impossible to easily defeat him. A heavy price will need to be paid, and at least 100 people will need to be sent out to encircle and suppress him. As for whether he can succeed, he still has some confidence. Although that kid has incredible power, he is still a human being after all, and he can be dealt with as long as he is a human being. There is always a time when the other party is exhausted. Kenny's previous speculation may not be wrong. The opponent must have limits, and now there are data on the range of his abilities. As long as he relies on the number of people, he will definitely be able to kill the opponent. Alessandro thought confidently. At this moment, he could not wait to start the next arrest immediately. However, this matter still needs to be considered in the long term, and mobilizing troops will also take some time. 2 hours later, an uninvited guest arrived outside Base 23. Next to a big tree, a well-armed soldier just passed by when a blue figure swung down from the branch. The flexible and powerful foot kicked the soldier on the head. In just a moment, the soldier in front of him fainted and fell to the ground, making almost no sound the whole time. Mystique Raven showed a smile, and then the skin on her body turned layer by layer, almost instantly turning into a soldier who fell to the ground. Grabbing the soldier, Raven quickly climbed up the tree, broke the soldier's neck with a click, and placed him on the branch. After searching for something about this person's identity, after some research, Raven jumped down from the tree nimbly, making almost no sound in the process. She was so dexterous that she didn't look like a human being. Then, she pretended to patrol. After more than an hour, Raven almost figured out the situation, and she set her sights on a soldier. This man was apparently one of the 2 soldiers who had witnessed the battle not long ago. According to information from prison guards and prisoners, this man is one of the 3 survivors. Mystique Raven's eyes showed confusion. What happened? How come there are only 3 left dead? According to the information she gathered during this period, there were not only many people out to capture the mutant boy, but there were also 2 heavyweights among them. Number 1 and number 5. Thinking about the information about these 2 people, even Mystique couldn't help but feel scared. She couldn't believe how the mutant boy survived, even killing them. Super speed self-healing, energy impact, body metallization, strength enhancement, pulse interference, etc. How could 2 such powerful people be killed? So mutant children have this kind of power. At this moment, Mystique Raven's heart was filled with deep confusion and disbelief. So, she naturally turned her attention to the soldier, hoping to find out the news from him. Woo! After a fight, Raven covered his mouth and dragged him into a room. Tell me how you rounded up that mutant child. Mystique begins to extract a confession. Halo didn't want to answer originally, but under the influence of Mystique, he painfully began to tell. Mystique listened in confusion while taking out a recorder, preparing to record the soldier's words and show them to Eric later. Soon, she noticed that as she thought about it, the face of the soldier named Halo was filled with fear. He's scary. We thought this battle was safe. After all, there are 2 monsters, number 1 and no 5. But, he recounted how number 5 took action, used energy shock, and then was knocked away by the young man in an understatement. As the story unfolded, Mystique Raven's face showed a look of surprise. This mutant child seems to be somewhat unexpectedly strong. After Halo told him that number 1's pulse interference had no effect on the boy, Mystique Raven was stunned. According to the news she heard early in the morning, the pulse interference from number 1 was very strong. It was also because of this that she did not dare to enter the experimental base easily, or even sneak into their team, for fear that the other party would use pulse interference to invalidate her transformation ability. But now, the soldier told her that the pulse interference of number 1 actually failed. Facing that mutant kid failed. This mutant kid. At this moment, Mystique Raven's yellow pupils were filled with surprise and suspicion. At this time, Halo's face was full of fear. Just when I thought that this young man had almost reached his limit, panting, he was speechless due to fear. What? Mystique wondered. What could make this soldier so scared? Halo murmured in fear, the light destroys everything. Including number 1 and number 5, they all died in the light released by No. 37. The power of this light is irresistible. It is simply not a power that humans can possess. It is like a god. All dead, all dead. They all died in the light and turned into ashes, ha ha ha. As he talked, he became crazy, as if he was frightened and went insane. Listening to his story, Mystique was filled with shock. Light, what light can be so powerful? All dead. At this moment, her heart was full of confusion. She didn't understand what the light in front of the soldier was talking about. Is it so terrifyingly powerful? Just as she was about to inquire in detail, an alarm sounded in the experimental base that an outsider had invaded. Mystique frowned, knowing she couldn't continue asking. With a click, she finished off the soldier named Halo. At this moment, there was a flurry of excitement in base No. 23. Many soldiers were searching here, trying to find the invading enemy. When it comes to invading and escaping, Mystique Raven is very skilled at it, and she can easily transform into someone else and slip out of the base. By the time the people in base number 23 reacted, it was already too late. After running out of the experimental base, Mystique Raven took a deep look at the base in the distance. Originally, she wanted to stop at this base to collect some information about the mutant boy, such as who his parents were. She might be able to get something useful, but she didn't expect. It won't work this time, let's do it next time. Mystique Raven shook her head and left here with confusion about the mutant boy. When she left the base, many prisoners in the base also started talking. Did someone sneak in? The base is really getting worse and worse, haha. One of the prisoners sneered. Speaking of which, the fact that someone sneaked into the experimental base was not the biggest surprise to them. What shocked them the most was what they heard not long ago. Those who went out to encircle and suppress number 37, including number 1 and number 5, all died. For them, this news was no less than experiencing a magnitude 9 earthquake. This is number 5 with self-healing ability, and number 1 with pulse interference and other abilities. Before, they had all begun to gloat and pity. There are even people betting on whether number 37 will be brought back with his limbs broken or whether he will die a violent death. No one thinks that number 37 can escape. As a result, now, they actually heard the news that number 1 and number 5 were all killed by No. 37. All the prisoners were shocked. I suspect I heard false news. How did he do that? Is it possible that number 37 can really escape the pursuit of the base? Time passed, half an hour passed. Mystique Raven holds a voice recorder and is ready to head back to the Brotherhood of Mutants. However, to her surprise, she met 3 interesting guys along the way. Hiding in a hidden corner, Ruiwen quietly observed the 3 people not far away. 1 man and 2 women, the 3 of them were wearing black uniforms with an X logo. Among the 2 women, one has white hair, blue eyes, and slightly dark skin. She is clearly Storm. The other one has red hair and a special appearance, the Phoenix Girl. As for the man among them, he was wearing a pair of black glasses, and he was clearly Cyclops Scott. Ororo, Chin, Scott. Mystique Raven was a little surprised. Suddenly, Phoenix Girl Chin, who was walking in the street, stopped. Chin, what's wrong? Cyclops Scott turned around and asked. Phoenix Girl gestured for him to stop talking, then turned to look to the right. I sense you, Jean said. Mystique Raven frowned, knowing that Chin didn't deceive her. She walked out slowly. Mystique Raven, Scott and Aurora looked surprised, then became alert. Although Mystique is also a mutant, she is a member of the Brotherhood of Mutants, and her relationship with them cannot be said to be good. Why are you here? Scott asked warily. Why are you here? Mystique asked. Without waiting for their answer, Raven quickly figured out the reason and smiled. You are also here for the mutant child, right? Are you here to save him? She smiled. Scott frowned. Raven, who saw the answer from their expressions, chuckled and said, then you're a step too late. What? Scott's expression changed, and he had a bad feeling in his heart. That child, could it be? Knowing what they were thinking, Mystique Raven raised her eyebrows and said, "He's fine. On the contrary, he's beyond your expectations." Knowing that Chin, a guy with spiritual power, was here, "Don't try to leave easily this time," Rui Wen said openly. "Fine." Unexpected. Scott and others looked at each other. How unexpected? Scott looked confused. Mystique Raven smiled slightly and said shockingly, "That child is terrifyingly strong. All those who captured him this time died in his hands. Among them, there are two powerful mutants. One has super speed self-healing and energy shock, and the other has pulse interference." After carefully telling a lot of information about these two people, Mystique Raven said with a smile, "But these two powerful mutants died in the hands of that boy." After listening to Mystique's introduction, Chin and the others looked surprised. Such powerful mutants are all dead. How did they die? Storm's blue eyes were full of doubts. The next second, Mystique Raven said an answer that made them stunned. "They died in the light released by the young man, they all died." "What? All died in the light?" Scott and others were shocked. What light? What light can kill such a powerful mutant? Scott wondered. "I don't know about that." Mystique Raven smiled. Scott turned to look at Phoenix female Chin. "Chin, is what she said true?" "She's not lying," said Jean, who used telepathy. Scott and Storm next to them suddenly showed a look of surprise on their faces, and at the same time they were filled with doubts. At this moment, they couldn't help but have the idea of seeing that light. What kind of light can kill two powerful mutants? "Where is he now?" Scott asked. "I don't know." Mystique Raven shook her head and said, "Okay, can I leave now?" Scott hesitated for a moment, knowing that there was no point in leaving Mystique behind, and nodded. Raven glanced at them one last time and left, ready to go back to the Brotherhood of Mutants and tell Eric about the boy. After her back disappeared, Storm said, "What should we do now?" "Tell the professor about this first," Scott said. He took out his mobile phone from his body and dialed Professor X's number. Soon, the call was connected. "Scott, have you found someone?" Professor X's voice came from the other end of the phone. Scott glanced at Chin and the others and said, "Professor, we." Then, he gave Professor X a complete account of what Mystique said after meeting her. "The kid killed everyone who came after him with light." Professor X frowned, then turned his attention to the light. What mutant ability is so powerful? At this moment, not to mention Scott and the others were surprised, confused, and curious, even he was no exception, and he also wanted to see the child. When he asked Scott to continue searching for the boy, there was a commotion on the internet. Ever since the host Irina announced that the government would send secret weapons to capture the mutant boy, many netizens have been paying attention to Irina's movements. At this time, there were a lot of urging messages on the internet. "Irina, have you caught that person? What is the secret weapon? Hurry up and tell us the latest news." Many urging messages appeared, making Irina sweat break out on her forehead and feel a little panicked. According to the news she received not long ago, the operation has failed. And even the secret weapon he prepared died in the hands of that young man. With all this going on, how can she reply to what netizens say? At this moment, in addition to disbelief, she also felt deep regret. "If I had known earlier, I shouldn't have stopped talking about the relevant departments preparing a secret weapon. This time the young man will definitely not be able to escape and will be caught. What should she do now? Is it possible that she can't tell the truth?" Just when she was at a loss, her boss called her. "What? Let me tell you the truth," Irina said in surprise. On the other end of the phone, the boss's calm voice continued. "What happened this time cannot be concealed. If you tell me earlier, the impact will be smaller. But try to be as brief as possible, so as not to damage the prestige of the government department too much." When Irina heard this, she couldn't help but relax and said with a smile, "Don't worry, boss, I will handle this matter." After hanging up the phone, she immediately started writing her speech. An hour and a half later, the much-anticipated live broadcast started. Under the spotlight, Irina looked bright and moving in a bright red dress. "Hello, viewers, I am your host Irina." Irina curled her flaming red lips, showed a sweet smile, and said, "Today I'm here to tell you the results of the department's arrest of the mutant boy not long ago. After hearing her words, both the viewers who had a bad feeling towards mutants and other viewers had expectations in their eyes. Finally, we have the result. It's successful, right? When will the mutant fugitives be captured and shown their faces? With the secret weapon, the mutant brat will definitely be caught, no need to think about it. When will the fugitive be tried? Netizens were talking a lot, and they were all looking forward to the results announced by the host Irina. However, the next second, they heard an answer that shocked them. Viewers, I'm sorry that this arrest failed. Irina sighed. After the words fell, countless people's expressions froze, especially those who said they must have caught the mutant fugitive and wanted to put him on trial. At this moment, they all became even more unbelievable. Not long after, curses came from the mouths of netizens. Shiete, are all the relevant departments suckers? They can't even catch people. Where's the secret weapon? Where's the secret weapon you're talking about? With the secret weapon, you still can't catch a mutant. Rubbish. Just when there were doubts that the relevant departments could not even catch a mutant brat, Irina gave an explanation. She sighed and said in a very heavy voice, things are not what you think. The people from the relevant departments have really tried their best. The mutant is really difficult to deal with. After hesitating for a moment, she said something incredible under the spotlight. She said slowly, the mutant boy used the power of light to eliminate all those who were chasing him. This included the secret weapons he prepared, which were also eliminated by him. As soon as he finished speaking, many viewers watching the live show were stunned. Light, that boy used light to kill everyone who was chasing him. At this moment, everyone was shocked and unbelievable. How can this be? Many people did not believe this result and felt that Irina was deceiving them. Doubts arise. What light? How could it be so powerful? That's right, we don't believe it. Under the spotlight. Knowing that some people would question it, Irina said solemnly, this is true. What I said is also legally responsible. You can report it to confirm the answer. After hearing what the host Irina said, even the most unbelieving audience had no choice but to believe it, and then felt unbelievable emotions in their hearts. What kind of light can destroy all those who pursue it? This is incredible. Doubts filled everyone's hearts. At this time, Irina continued, viewers, don't worry, our program team will follow up on this incident, and maybe everyone will know what happened. She smiled and said, you don't have to worry too much. This arrest was just a fluke that allowed the mutant boy to escape. The people in our department were also careless. After all, everyone will be careless sometimes. Next time we take action, we will definitely catch him. Following her words, the audience's emotions relaxed a bit, and at the same time they also had expectations in their hearts, looking forward to the success of the subsequent arrest. At the same time, they also look forward to another live broadcast, allowing them to see what the so-called light is all about. While the audience was talking about it, some mutants who were always paying attention to Irina also noticed this live show. In a lonely street, Logan and others stopped searching and looked at each other. This little guy, Wolverine. Logan had to sigh. Otto smiled and said, it seems we don't have to look for him anymore. He solved the trouble by himself. He's really awesome. Chris and Valentine next to them nodded in agreement. At this moment, besides being surprised that Sue had eliminated those who were chasing him, they were also confused about one thing. Light, does Sue have the ability to shine? Why doesn't everyone know? At this moment, they were surprised and confused. In addition, they are also a little worried about the next arrest that host Irina said. You know, the next arrest operation will definitely be bigger, and Sue's hope of escape will be even lower. A mere mutant has slapped the government department in the face several times. If they don't catch him, will the government department give up? After Luo Zhen and others wanted to understand this, the joy in their hearts quickly disappeared, and they became worried about Sue. While they were worried about Su Yao, Magneto Eric was also watching the live broadcast in the Brotherhood of Mutants compound. Eric looked surprised. Light, this child has other abilities. After a period of confusion, Mystique Raven returns. As soon as she came back, Mystique smiled and said, Eric, I got some useful information, including information about the mutant boy you were paying attention to. Eric was immediately interested. Then, he saw Raven take out a black voice recorder. While playing the recording, Mystique Raven described the process of infiltrating the base and some information she obtained. When the recorder played back Halo's description of light destroying everything, even Magneto King Eric showed emotion on his face. Halo's voice kept coming. The light ruins everything. The power of this light is irresistible. It is simply not a power that humans can possess. It is like a god. All dead, all dead. They all died in the light and turned into ashes, ha ha ha. The content of this recorder was not as vague as what Irina said in the live broadcast, but because it was so detailed, Magneto Eric had to feel moved. Irina's so-called light is actually so powerful. Similarly, although he received more detailed information, the surprise and doubts in his heart did not diminish, but became more and more intense. What exactly is the light in their mouths like, and is it so scary? It was so scary that you could tell from the voice that the soldier was mentally disturbed. After a while, he said in a deep voice, "Look for me, I must find this child. Ruiwan, please bring more people with you. You must find him for me." Raven nodded. While the members of the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants, as well as Logan and others were making various changes, Suyao was working hard to practice Sunshine. Experience of Sunshine +1. Experience of Sunshine +1. Ability. Sunshine 27/500 level 2. At this time, Venom's little head popped out from his right hand. "Sue, what on earth are you doing?" Venom asked, confused. He said that he couldn't understand it. Ever since he met Sue, he had been practicing his superpowers, and he didn't use his powers to hit targets. It looked weird. What's the use of being so capable? He mused. Could it be that he is proficient in superpowers and trying to control it more finely? Suyao glanced at him and said casually, "I'm practicing my superpowers. You know, superpowers always need to be practiced. If you don't practice, you will become rusty." Really? Venom was confused. While talking to Venom, Suyao glanced at the estimated lifespan on the panel. Age: 16, remaining lifespan 90 days. Suyao breathed a sigh of relief. The light energy in the body has increased a lot, and the lifespan has finally been extended to the point where it is now barely enough to prevent sudden death. As long as he improves more and more in the future, and even unlocks more and more abilities, he will be able to defeat various cancers in his body sooner or later. Soon night fell, and the sun shone brightly, and the progress made a good improvement. Ability. Sunshine 89/500 level 2. Looking at the progress on the panel, Suyao hesitated a little. Isn't this too slow? He thought. It will take at least several days until the sun shines and reaches level 3. He was hesitating whether to increase the unlocking progress and obtain new abilities first. After a while, Suyao shook his head. He still couldn't resist the idea of continuing to improve the sunshine. When the sun shines at the 3rd level, the range of use will definitely be greatly improved, and it will not be stretched when facing some situations. Even the power of the sun will increase a lot. If the sun was shining before and it was level 3, then number 5 and number 1 would definitely die faster. Time passed quickly, and 6 days passed quickly. Relying on Venom's perception, Suyao successfully got rid of some of the guys who were following him. At the same time, this afternoon, the sun was shining and it was a critical time. Under the warm sunshine, Suyao began his last practice. A beep sounds. Ability. Sunshine 0/1000 level 3. The next second, Suyao's body changed. A familiar warm current appeared, rapidly transforming his body. As the warm current flowed through, Suyao felt some changes in his cells. At this time, the venom in his right hand was startled, and a sense of threat came over him, and he subconsciously crawled out of Suyao's right hand. The black liquid squirmed. What happened? Sus body. At that moment, Venom felt that Sus body had undergone an inexplicable change, but it was unclear what it was. When the feeling of threat faded, he crawled into Sus' right hand again. Before he could change his little brain to ask anything, he immediately felt the difference. A far more comfortable feeling came over him than before, and Venom felt that his body, which was weakened by the split, was recovering quickly. Venom was stunned. Sue, what happened to you? He looked confused. He felt that he could not understand the Sue in front of him more and more. Everything about Sue confused him. Suyao did not answer him, but started the test. As the light energy in the body decreases, the sunlight within 75 meters is slightly distorted in the next second. Suyao frowned slightly, only improved by this much. After being disappointed for a moment, he shook his head and comforted himself. Forget it, it's not bad, just enough. And as other abilities are upgraded, the light energy in the body increases, and the range of sunlight will also increase. Generally speaking, it is enough. In addition to the improvement in the range of sunlight, he found that the light energy in his body had also changed. Under the sunlight, Su Yao quietly waited for the recovery of light energy in his body. Light energy +1. Light energy +1. After feeling the light energy in his body, Su Yao made a rough estimate. The third level ability can be used about 50 times, and the second level ability can be used more than 100 times. Overall, it's barely enough. Of course, speaking more deeply, it is still not enough. The sun is shining and it has been upgraded. Now I can focus on unlocking progress. Su Yaoyuan looked forward to it. Whether it is the floating flying ability that may appear later, or the changes that may occur when the imitation reaches 100%, he is extremely looking forward to it. At the same time, the more abilities are awakened, the more light energy will be in the body, creating a virtuous cycle. Light energy +1. Light energy +1. The number of energy points continues to increase. He was collecting light energy here, but Venom was now suspicious. Just now, he sensed a change in the sunlight above his head. He thought Su was going to use that terrifying ability, so he was so frightened that he retracted his hand. After waiting for a long time, he was relieved when the terrifying light did not appear. At the same time, he was also a little surprised. I don't know if it's his illusion, but compared to last time, the distortion range of sunlight seems to have increased 2 or 3 times this time. Illusion, Venom muttered. Just as he was confused, he saw that Su was no longer practicing his abilities, but instead turned sideways to face the sun. Venom immediately guessed what Su was doing. Is this absorbing sunlight to restore energy and physical fitness? Then, in surprise, he watched Su almost motionless, basking in the sun for an entire afternoon. Facing Su's increasingly confusing behavior, Venom expressed that he couldn't understand humans anymore. Are all human behaviors so strange? Is it necessary to bask in the sun all afternoon? If you want to restore your energy and physical fitness, you must have recovered it long ago, right? As the sun completely set, Su Yao finally stopped basking in the sun. He looked at the panel and stared at the energy point column above. Energy points, 5,079. Seeing more than 5,000 energy points, Su Yao felt very good. Glancing at the unlocking progress. Unlocking progress 80%. Su Yao's heart moved and he added all the energy points to the unlocking progress. The next second, the unlocking progress jumped immediately. Unlocking progress 82%. Is it only enough to increase it by 2%? Su Yao shook his head. After being slightly disappointed, he started to look forward to it again. It's coming soon. It should be raised to 85% tomorrow. I don't know what abilities I will get. There are also possible changes after the imitation is 100%, and the next imitation target is the Scarlet Witch. Chaos magic. Thinking of chaos magic, his eyes couldn't help but light up. This is one of Marvel's 3 ancient powers, possessing the terrifying power to modify reality. Of course, this is a bit wrong. Only when combined with the Scarlet Witch's mutant ability to modify probability can chaos magic be the real chaos magic. This is a power that even the master of the source of chaos magic does not possess. In short, the Scarlet Witch has abilities that he can explore for a long time. I just don't know if it will be related to Sissos, the god of black magic. Su Yao frowned slightly. Chaos magic is vaguely related to Sissos, the god of black magic. If he really imitates it, he doesn't know if it will attract the other party's attention. If you really attract attention, then play Dafa. That's an ancient god, and he's not that easy to deal with. After a while, Su Yao shook his head and didn't think about it anymore. It is impossible for him to give up his unlocking progress for the sake of unknown threats. After taking a look at the dim sky, Su Yao walked away from here. Not far away, the venom in his right hand reminded him. Careful. Su Yao frowned and immediately knew that Venom was being followed again. In the past few days, he has discovered that many people are looking for him. In addition to people from government departments, there are also some people who are looking for him, some of them with evil intentions. Fortunately, Venom's perception is very buggy, especially his perception of danger. Venom usually senses it in advance before people in the distance notice him. In what direction? Su Yao asked. Behind that wall on your left, Venom said. Su Yao walked to the wall and listened quietly. The voices of two middle-aged men came faintly from next door. I'm so annoyed, where is that kid? If I hadn't collected money and found the person, I would have received a large amount of US dollars, so I wouldn't have spent time and effort doing such stupid things. Dave, a middle-aged man in a blue shirt, complained, the mission of that underground organization is really troublesome. Another man wearing white short-sleeved shirt curled his lips and said, please keep your voice down. Are you afraid that people won't hear you if you speak so loudly? If the mission target is shouted away by you, see if I don't beat you. Dave was dissatisfied. What's this? We've been looking for it for so long and haven't found it yet. How could we find it now? You really think too much. Just as the two of them were muttering, Su Yao, who was next door, stopped and was about to step forward to interrogate them. Underground organization. For just a moment, he thought of Kalpana who he killed and the speedster who escaped. I let that guy run away not long ago, and he probably reported it back to the organization, so this happened now. Are you planning to cause trouble? Su Yao frowned, wondering where they got the courage to come to him. Because of their leader. While thinking, Su Yao quickly left here. After finding a secluded place that could be exposed to the moonlight, he reminded Venom to pay attention to his surroundings and then fell into a deep sleep. Light energy +1. Nothing happened overnight. The moon fell and the sun rose, and soon the next day came. It's still a sunny day, and the bright sun hangs in the sky, casting down its scorching rays. Under the sunlight, Su Yao was awakened by the reminder sound in his head. Light energy +1. Light energy +1. While basking in the sun, he became a little idle. After thinking for a while, he decided to study the venom. After a while, under Su Yao's control, a black battle suit covered his body. Glancing at the suit on his body, he breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it's not the kind of transformation that turns into a venomous monster and is wrapped in venom, but a textured black suit similar to the blackened Spider-Man and the blackened Superman, otherwise he would be disgusted. It's not bad. At least it can defend against bullets from some ordinary firearms at critical moments. Su Yao commented. As for sniper rifles, armor-piercing bullets and the like, he had no hope. Venom itself is not a strong point in defense, but its strength is in its resilience. Hearing his evaluation, Venom was a little dissatisfied. Su, is this okay? It's obviously the best. The two of us combined are invincible. Listening to Venom's big words, the corner of Su Yao's mouth twitched. You guys really haven't experienced the beatings from society. You don't know what it means to be strong. There are a lot of scary guys on the earth. Su Yao shook his head. Even now he dare not say he is invincible. The Venom really deserves a beating. The scary guy. Venom was confused, not knowing what the scary guy in Sus mouth was. Also, why does Su seem to know so many things? From Sus tone, it seems like he knows a lot of secrets and there are a lot of strong people. At this time, Su Yao suddenly thought of something and asked, Venom, can you cure cancer? Cancer in your human mouth. Venom was stunned for a moment, then opened his mouth and smiled. Yes, I can cure it. I can eat away cancer cells in your human body. It's easy for me. Su Yao's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he immediately had an idea in his mind. However, after hesitating for a long time, he still did not make up his mind to let the venom enter his internal organs. After thinking for a while, he said, try to see if you can eat the cells in my right hand. Venom's eyes showed confusion, not knowing what this guy Su was going to do. The next second he did so. Then, before Su Yaoyan could reveal his surprise, Venom suddenly shouted and hurriedly ran out from his right hand. At the same time, Su Yao felt a burst of sunshine energy released from his right arm. What happened? Su Yao quickly controlled the power and then looked at Venom. Then, he was shocked. He found that Venom's body seemed to be missing some, and there was still faint energy remaining in Venom's body tissue, which was eroding his body. Venom showed fear on his face and said, Su, your body cells. After Venom's explanation, Su Yao finally understood what happened. Just when the venom is preparing to phagocytose cells and destroy the cell walls and membranes, a mysterious energy seeps out from the damaged cells. Light flashed in Venom's perception. This power has no effect on Su Yao himself, but it is almost as poisonous to the venom. Fortunately, Zan did not destroy too many cells at once, otherwise he would be disabled even if he died. Of course, it's also possible that Venom sensed something was wrong, so he didn't do that. Su Yao frowned. He also didn't expect that his cells would be so special. It seems that those few transformations have really changed the cells of the body. After shaking his head, he finally gave up the idea of letting the venom eat up the cancer cells. Even ordinary cells are so terrifying, it's hard to imagine what cancer cells have become in his body now. Maybe like a monster. Cthulhu. Su Yao sighed and thought, we can only continue to increase the light energy to suppress it, or obtain new abilities later. I just don't know whether the cancer cells will worsen or whether they can survive until that time. Su Yao shook his head and stopped thinking, turning his attention to the energy points. Light energy +1. Light energy +1. The sun gradually rose up, reached the middle position, and then slowly set back. It's approaching evening. Su Yao couldn't help but glance at the panel. Energy points. 10,903. More than 10,000, that should be enough. In Su Yao's expectant eyes, the unlocking progress flashed rapidly. Unlocking progress 86%. As the unlocking progress reached 86%, the prompt sounded instantly. Ability, floating and flying unlocked. Ability, floating flying 0/100 level 1. Finally come. Su Yao felt happy instantly. Fly. This is one of mankind's dreams. The invention of airplanes and other things was also due to man's yearning for the sky, and now he has it, and he can fly with his body without using tools. At the same time, having a flight will give other people a completely different feeling. Su Yao couldn't wait to start trying. Floating flight experience +1. Following his thoughts, under Venom's stunned gaze, his figure slowly floated into the air. 10 centimeters above the ground, half a meter above the ground, 1 meter above the ground. His figure in black clothes was slowly suspended in the air. As the breeze blew by, his whole person exuded an elegant, ethereal and mysterious feeling. Looking at it from a distance, there is a feeling that heaven and earth coexist with him, and all things are unique to him, as the center of all things. The aura of the whole person has risen by more than a level. Like all things and gods. This feeling, Su Yao murmured secretly. Under Venom's dull gaze, his figure slowly rose. 2 meters. 10 meters. Su Yao felt it inside his body. The consumption of floating flight is minimal, almost no consumption, it can be regarded as a constant state, but I don't know if it's due to level restrictions. Once it goes beyond the range of more than 10 meters, the consumption of light energy in the body will increase. There is a feeling that the ability is really used and energy needs to be expended. In addition, he found that the speed of flight was also subject to some restrictions, at least not as fast as he imagined. Of course, besides these shortcomings, there was one more thing that surprised him. At this moment, the prompts kept ringing in his head. Floating flight experience +1. Floating flight experience +1. Floating flight experience +1. The experience of floating and flying increases at an exaggerated speed. Alerts sounded one after another. Floating flight experience +1. Floating flight experience +1. Su Yao was surprised. The speed at which this experience increases is unexpectedly fast. Even just by maintaining the flying state, the experience is constantly increasing, and there is no need to repeat the practice at all. The most important thing is that in the flying state, almost no light energy needs to be consumed. This means that except at night, Su Yao can always maintain a flying state, and the speed of experience increase will be unprecedentedly fast. Su Yao had a hunch that with the ability to float and fly, he would probably be the first to reach level 5, and also the one with the least effort. The benefits brought by this are simply self-evident. Just the increase in light energy brought by the floating flight upgrade is enough for him to make money. Especially after reaching level 5, the amount of light energy brought at that time must be unexpectedly large. Su Yao Yuan looked forward to it. By then, both the sunlight range and the battery life of other abilities should be greatly improved. Su Yao thought, the upgrade direction of floating flight should be to improve the range and speed, right? From just now, he felt that the speed of floating flight was extremely slow, and there was a rush that could not be compared to the running speed of ordinary people. There is also a range limit of 10 meters. Beyond this range, the constant state of flight will be lost, thus consuming a lot of light energy. Obviously, after the flight upgrade, it should be improved in this direction. Suddenly, Su Yao, who was deep in thought, noticed something was wrong around him. In the flying state, he vaguely heard the sound of ethereal music playing little by little. Sacred, solemn, mysterious, ethereal. This music is somewhat familiar. It is the BGM that came with Orochi when he appeared. As the ethereal voice sounded, the aura around him increased again. The feeling that the heaven and the earth coexist with him, and all things are unique to him, as if all things are like God, is getting heavier and heavier. It's just that the sound of the ethereal spirit is very weak and appears, which makes this feeling reach a limit and is not strong. Just when he was surprised by his own changes, Venom was already stunned. Su actually flew up inexplicably and gained the ability to fly. He couldn't believe it. Besides, this sound, the inexplicable ethereal sound ringing in his ears, made Venom feel solemn, sacred, and mysterious. At the same time, there was also an inexplicable sense of tension, as if something had appeared, and this ethereal voice was welcoming him. After a while, he finally got rid of this vague feeling of tension. Venom murmured, "Where did this sound come from?" He couldn't find where it came from. It was all nearby, as if it came from an inexplicable place. At this time, Su Yao slowly lowered his altitude and landed 1 foot above the ground from the sky. Floating flight experience +1. He raised his head and glanced at the sky. It was already approaching evening, but after testing the flying ability, the sky was almost completely dark now. Unlocking progress 86%. Glancing at the panel, Su Yao thought, "I wonder what will be awakened after 90%. Or 95%. The energy points collected tomorrow should be enough to increase the unlocking progress to 90%. Su Yao couldn't help but look forward to it. While floating cross-legged in the air, Su Yao felt the faint sound of ethereal sounds all around him. He was somewhat thankful that he was in a remote place. Otherwise, the noise caused by this would be a bit big. Floating flight experience +1. Floating flight experience +1. While absorbing the moonlight, Su Yao felt it and found that absorbing the moonlight was enough to maintain the effect of floating flight. 2.5 hours later, a ping sounded in his head. Ability: Floating Flying 0/500ths Level 2. Taking advantage of the darkness, Su Yao immediately started trying. 1 meter, 10 meters, 50 meters. In the dark night, Su Yao looked up at the moon in the sky. As 50 meters the limit? Su Yao felt a little regretful. Of course, it's not that you can't continue flying, it just consumes a lot of light energy. Floating flight experience +1. In addition to the range, he discovered that the floating flight was slow, which would also change. If it could not match the running speed of ordinary people before, now it is a bit exceeded. The speed finally comes in handy. Su Yao sighed. At least, the flying speed has exceeded his running speed. This is only level 2. Su Yao was looking forward to it. Floating flight experience +1. Floating flight experience +1. Nearly 3 hours later, Su Yao felt sleepy and had to fly down from the air. Ability: Floating Flying 125/100ths Level 2. While feeling sleepy, he also tried to sleep in the air, but failed. He found that the floating flight state is controlled by thinking. Sleeping will make the mind confused, which can easily cause the floating flight to fail, or even fly around. Su Yao shook his head and chose to give up. After ordering Venom to be on alert, he fell into a deep sleep. Time flies. The warm sunshine shone down, causing Su Yao to wake up. Light energy +1. As he woke up, Su Yao's figure immediately floated up. Floating flight experience +1. Floating flight experience +1. The momentum gradually increased, making people intimidated. Gradually, the ethereal sound that made people feel numb began to appear. Even though he heard the venom hidden in Su Yao's right hand more than once, he still couldn't help but feel panicked. When the time came in the afternoon, Su Yao stopped floating. Ability: Floating Flying 0/1000ths Level 3. Su Yao tried it quickly and found that the range had been increased to 200 meters. At the same time, the flying speed has also increased a lot, more than twice as fast as normal people running. Although it's not too fast, the speed is much faster than ordinary people. In addition, because the ability of floating flight has been continuously upgraded to level 3, the light energy in his body also suddenly increased. The number of times the third level ability can be used has increased to more than 70 times. Floating flight upgrades very quickly. If it reaches level 4 or 5, the energy in the body will increase dramatically. At that time, the lack of energy will be relieved a lot. In addition, the range of sunlight has also been increased to about 82 meters. More threatening. At this time, light energy +1. Su Yao looked at the energy point. Energy points, 9,983. I wonder if I will gain new abilities. With curiosity in his eyes, Su Yao invested all his energy points into unlocking progress. The next second, 86% of the unlocking progress was blurred. Unlocking progress 89%. Su Yao frowned, stuck at 89%. He found that every time he wanted to break through to the next level, the difficulty would increase a lot. There was nothing in the front, but just 1% in the back would be stuck for a lot of time. After thinking for a while, Su Yao shook his head and stopped thinking. Judging from the speed of collecting light energy, this progress will not take long, and it is estimated that everything will be collected tomorrow. Suddenly, Su Yao's heart moved. He stopped and looked into the distance. These people are really annoying. Standing on a tall building, he could already see the people gradually approaching in the distance without even using the venom to remind him this time. During this period, he met people looking for him more than once. I sense the malice in them. Venom grinned ferociously. I want to bite their heads. Suck it. Su Yao twitched the corner of his mouth, pushed his head away with his long tongue hanging out, and then looked at the guys who were following him. It's not a problem to be tracked constantly like this. These people must be taught a lesson. Space transfer experience +1. Space transfer experience +1. His figure disappeared from the spot and appeared downstairs. In the distance, 4 strong men were looking around, trying to find something. Su Yao quietly followed these people, preparing to follow them to their lair. An hour later, Su Yao followed the 4 people to a small house. From a distance, you can see that the 4 people are talking to someone in the room. Space transfer experience +1. Su Yao quietly approached and stuck to the window. As he observed, he discovered that there were 5 people in the room, 4 men and 1 woman. Faintly, their conversation could still be heard. The voice of the woman in green clothes was full of disdain. You are really useless. It took you so long to find someone. We doubt whether we still need to cooperate with you. Among the 4 hired men, the short, stocky middle-aged man frowned. You guys also know that this mutant is hard to find. If it's really that easy to find, why are you still asking us to cooperate? Avian looked disdainful, and just as she was about to say something, the man next to her interrupted her. Okay Avian, that boy is really hard to find, don't embarrass them. Seeing Anil shaking his head, Avian had to stop and then changed his subject. She smiled coldly. That little cutie can really hide. Fortunately, we didn't find him. Otherwise, we would definitely let him know the consequences of offending our underground organization. Well, as soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly covered her chest with a look of disbelief on her face. Black particle experience +1. At this moment, a bloody hole the size of a fist appeared on her chest. Looking inside, you could see the scenery behind it. That part of the flesh and bones had completely disappeared. Bang bang bang. The aftermath of the black particles has not stopped yet, directly piercing through several walls before being annihilated. Avian wailed. At this moment, her face was full of fear and confusion. What happened? Before she could think about it, she vomited blood, twitched and fell to the ground, rolling in pain. Blood flows. Before the shock passed, she vaguely saw a figure dressed in black. It's him. Avian was stunned. Finally, her eyes froze, and the last remaining things in her eyes were fear, anger and unwillingness. Seeing Avian's tragic death, both the members of the mutant underground organization and the other 4 mercenaries were shocked at this moment. In unison, the 4 mercenaries immediately took out pistols from their waists. A pair of eyes stared at the mysterious figure slowly walking from the door. It's you. With just one glance, they recognized who this person was. What followed was shock and anger. Before they could do anything to this guy actually came to their door. And he also killed someone. This is completely disrespectful to them. Rebound shield experience +1. 4 mercenaries took the lead, and 2 of them tried to fire. Boom. In an instant, 2 screams sounded. The bullet first shot in front of Su Yao, and then quickly bounced back. When the other 2 fearful mercenaries saw this, their hands shook and they almost couldn't hold their guns. This freak can really bounce bullets. Fortunately, I didn't take action immediately. Su Yao ignored them and immediately focused on the remaining 4 mutants. Space transfer experience +1. The next moment, his figure disappeared and appeared next to a black young man. Godfinger experience +1. Hide quickly. Unfortunately, even though the other 3 people screamed, it was already too late. As soon as Su Yao appeared next to the black young man, his fingers had already touched him. Click, bang. The sound of the mirror breaking was heard, and then the black young man's body was like a cannonball, hitting the wall not far away. The wall cracked, followed by the sound of bone cracking. The young black man didn't even say a word and fainted in an instant. Just as Su Yao was about to move on to the next target, he suddenly felt a tingling pain in his head, as if some invisible force was impacting his mind. Psychic attack. His eyes instantly turned to the white-skinned fat man. Being stimulated, the power in Su Yao's body surged out of control, as if it was about to explode completely in the next moment. Venom suddenly emerged from his right hand, and a black mask formed on his head in an instant. My spiritual power. Bob was stunned for a moment, unable to believe how a mere puddle of black liquid could invalidate his mental abilities. Su Yao did know, remembering that Venom has extremely strong mental resistance. Whether it is a magical illusion, a dream, or an attack from other spiritual forces, Venom is basically immune. He was not surprised that the venom on the head made him immune to mental attacks. Of course, he would not tell this fat man this. But he was a little surprised that this guy could bypass the rebound shield and use mental attacks. Spiritual light pillar experience +1. A blue energy beam rose from the ground without warning. In an instant, Fatty Bai screamed, and his whole body was split open and blood splattered. He needed to be covered with mosaic immediately. Rebound shield experience +1. Black particle experience +1. Black particle experience +1. Spiritual light pillar experience +1. Space transfer experience +1. Godfinger experience +1. Facing his series of attacks, Anil and others felt desperate. They couldn't imagine that there would be such a powerful mutant. Compared with what was shown in the live broadcast not long ago, they only felt this terrible pressure after facing it in person. Maybe, we can only eliminate him by besieging him with more people. There was no surprise. Faced with Su Yao's series of attacks, they all fell into a pool of blood. Our leader will not let you go, can you escape? Su Yao ignored these people's nonsense about beating them to death and sent them directly to leave this world. After doing all this, he slowly turned around and left, leaving blood all over the room. On the way, Su Yao was thinking about whether to go to the so-called underground organization. The sun sets. What happened here was quickly discovered. People from the Mutant Underground Organization and the Mercenary Organization gathered at this place. Looking at the tragic situation in the room, the 20 or 30 people present looked solemn, and some even covered their mouths and bent over to vomit. That little thing is right. The man, who was tall and strong, wearing a black jacket and a dark face with a sinister look on his face, spat on the ground. What a guy, he dares to kill even our people. Henrik, the leader of the Underground Mutant Organization, had murderous intent flashing in his eyes. At this time, an ordinary-looking young man stood up in the mercenary team. Thomas looked at the crowd of underground organizations and said with hidden anger, "You are still to blame for this matter. If you hadn't insisted on finding that kid, Andy and the others wouldn't have died so miserably." The mercenary companions beside him also felt uncomfortable after hearing this. The 4 people who died were all their comrades. They had experienced life and death many times. No one could accept their sudden death now. The people in the Mutant Underground Organization all showed angry faces. Since you accepted the mission, can you blame them if you die? Moreover, their people are also dead. At this time, Henrik, the leader of the underground mutant organization, had a violent look on his face, and then snorted coldly. The next second, Thomas, who was about to yell something angrily, suddenly froze and subconsciously looked down at his body. At some point, his figure gradually became transparent, as if he had turned into a shadow. Thomas stretched out his hand and opened his mouth. The next second, a sound like bubbles bursting sounded. Thomas turned into a shadow and disappeared in front of everyone. Thomas, what happened? The mercenaries exclaimed. The people in the mutant underground organization all had proud expressions on their faces at this moment. They discussed. The leader's ability is still as strong as ever. It's really scary. Even though they had seen it many times, they still couldn't help but feel amazed and fearful. This kind of power that abruptly changes a person from entity to nothingness is really frightening. Even the leader can not only turn other people into nothingness, but also himself. In the state of nothingness, no one can attack him. It can be said that the leader is invincible. This is why they are so convinced of their leader and not afraid of the mutant brat. Compared to that kid, their leader is even more terrifying and frightening. As for that kid, I'm afraid he would die if he didn't meet the leader. He dared to offend their mutant underground organization several times. He was really ungrateful and looking for death. This time the kid must have completely angered the leader. He is dead. They had all begun to wonder when the leader would violently kill the brat. At this time, the expressions of the mercenaries all changed, and they were about to pick up their guns and point them at Henrik. But before they even picked up their guns, the bodies of a dozen of them became illusory. Under the sunlight, their figures disappeared instantly, as if they had never appeared. Henrik snorted coldly. The leader is awesome. These people are stupid enough. People in the mutant underground organization all showed admiration in their eyes. Then, a slender and gorgeous woman wearing bright red clothes slowly walked out and asked with a smile, "Chief, when are we going to trouble that guy?" Henrik glanced at her, then his face darkened and he said, "Now. I can't wait to kill that little thing. You are really looking for death. You dare to offend our organization." After making a sarcastic remark, he paused and then said, "But we can't go find him immediately yet. We still need to find some people to cooperate." Cooperate. More than a dozen members of the underground organization were slightly stunned, not understanding what the leader meant. Henrik sneered, "There is a saying that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Although he can kill that little thing on his own, it's not bad to be able to kill that little thing with help." Half an hour later, he contacted the government department and proposed the idea of cooperation. Facing his call, the person on the other side was initially wary, and then after some consideration, he agreed directly. Similar to what Henrik thought, they also felt that the enemy of their enemy was their friend, so they had to work together to kill the thorn in their side, the weirdo. The two sides discussed it for a long time. During this process, Alessandro, the base director of Experimental Base Number 23, also confidently arranged the people. An armed team of hundreds of people and 3 helicopters carried out high-altitude bombing. And then, add those mutants from the mutant underground. Alessandro's lips curved into a confident smile. While they were discussing the plan, Su Yaojung took advantage of the darkness to add the energy points he had just collected to his unlocking progress. Unlocking progress 89%. Looking at the progress of nothing happening, Su Yao curled his lips. Floating flight experience +1. Floating flight experience +1. The sun rises and the moon sets, and dawn comes soon the next day. 4 stories high upstairs, Su Yao, who had just woken up not long ago, was sitting on the edge of the roof, shaking his legs from time to time, as if he was not afraid that he would fall if he was not careful. Light energy +1. Light energy +1. Energy points, 1101. After taking a look at the energy points, Su Yao instantly added them to the unlocking progress. Unlocking progress 90%. Looking at the 90% unlocking progress, Su Yao frowned slightly. No. He was a little disappointed. Suddenly, he noticed something was wrong. He found that when flying, the ethereal sounds around him became clearer, and at the same time, his temperament increased. To his surprise, the mutant underground and Alessandro were already looking for him. After an hour, Irina's eyes lit up after receiving the news, and she immediately held another live show. As soon as the news was released, it immediately attracted the attention of many people on the internet. You know, it hasn't been long since the last time. Under the gaze of pairs of eyes, Irina stood in the spotlight wearing a white dress. Netizens started talking about it. Hey, why is the live show started again? What's the situation? Irina knew that some people would be confused, so she went straight to the topic without any nonsense. Good morning, viewers, I am your host Irina. Irina smiled and said, today, I am here to tell you good news. The relevant departments will launch a new operation in the near future, and this operation is different from the past. The mutant boy who narrowly escaped last time can't escape this time. Irina looked confident, raised her hands and swore. Seeing her confident expression, netizens were immediately surprised. Can we really catch him? What gave Irina the confidence that the government departments are very well prepared this time? Curious, following Irina's words, netizens could not help but regain their confidence, thinking that Irina would not be innocent. You know, even last time, Irina never swore so firmly. It can be seen that this time things must be done. At this moment, many people showed excitement and anticipation, looking forward to the scene in which the mutant boy was defeated and arrested soon. Just as netizens were talking about it, Wolverine, Logan and others who noticed this scene, as well as people from the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants, all changed their expressions. There are too many, so I can only cut off part of them. Dark street corners. That little guy. Wolverine Logan frowned and threw his cigar away irritably. Irina's unprecedented confident expression made him feel something was wrong. Not only him, but Chris and the others next to him also felt the same way. What a huge battle it took to make this woman show such an expression. They felt a faint chill on their backs. They were not sure whether Sue could escape this time. Let's see if we can find him. If you can, help. Chris sighed. Government departments. A middle-aged man wearing official uniform, his blue pupils suddenly turned yellow in an instant. He is clearly Mystique. Mystique Raven frowned tightly and murmured, the situation is a bit bad. She turned over the paper information in her hand, with a look of worry in her eyes. According to the information in her hand, the director of Experimental Base No. 23, Alessandro, actually dispatched hundreds of armed soldiers to carry out the arrest operation. At the same time, this information also shows that a certain underground mutant organization has joined it, especially the leader of the organization highlighted in the information. The leader of this organization is incredibly powerful. It can actually turn people into nothingness within a certain range, and it can also become nothingness itself. Looking at this information, Mystique Raven's eyes became even more worried. The mutant child's strength is good, but he will definitely not be this person's opponent. Not to mention, there are over 100 soldiers. How to resist this? Mystique looked through the information and felt her heart pounding. The next moment, she took out her phone and hurriedly reported the matter to Magneto Eric. What? Even Magneto King Eric was shocked when he saw this information. An armed team of hundreds of people. Besides, after scanning several pages of the leader's information, Magneto King Eric's eyes became serious. Even he has no chance of defeating this person. It's just like the Black Emperor Sebastian Shaw back then, making people feel desperate. At this moment, he had given up hope. He clearly remembered that Black Emperor Sebastian Shaw had the ability to absorb any form of energy and store and transform it, including nuclear energy and the kinetic energy of bullets. This makes him almost invincible, and every blow can only make that guy stronger. If that guy Charles hadn't used psychic attacks back then, he really wouldn't have been able to defeat him. And this Henrik is equally invincible and possesses terrifying abilities. Perhaps, only the rumored Omega Mutant can defeat him. Magneto Eric sighed. Even he thought he might not be able to defeat that person. How could this young boy possibly defeat him? He thought that he would receive news of the boy's death soon. On the other side, Mystique Raven heard Eric's fear and pessimism in his voice. Mystique Raven was silent for a moment, and after some hesitation, she sent the information to the X-Men to see if they could save the child. Scott wearing sunglasses, Aurora the Storm Girl with white hair, and Phoenix Girl Chin with red hair. Trouble. Cyclops Scott frowned tightly, seeing the news delivered by Mystique Raven. Whether it was Chin, Aurora, or him, they only felt solemn at this moment. Let's talk about the hundreds of armed soldiers first. Under such firepower, how could the young man escape? It would be better if he didn't die on the spot. Not to mention, the leader of the mutant underground organization was also included in the news. The three of them were frightened to see such a troublesome person. You can't deal with this kind of character at all, right? If that child meets. After imagining the result, the three of them fell silent. With no other choice, they passed the news to Professor X. Looking at the news, Charles frowned tightly. A character comparable to Sebastian Shaw. If Eric hadn't suddenly removed Shaw's psychic defense helmet, allowing him to use psychic attacks, they might have died long ago. And this child is about to face a character comparable to Shaw. Professor X. Charles sighed secretly, not seeing any hope in his heart. Although he gave up hope, both he and Eric sent people to see if they could rescue the child. Time passes quickly. 11 o'clock in the morning. At this moment, the golden sun in the sky had disappeared, replaced by a gloomy sky. Woohoo! Dark clouds covered the top of the head, and the moist wind howled, as if a storm was coming. The sky became dark. Su Yao sat on the edge of the roof and rested for a while. Just as he was about to leave the place, an abnormality in the distance attracted his attention. At the same time, a warning from Venom also sounded. Careful! In the distance, Su Yao could see people dressed in black appearing in the distance. They were approaching and surrounding them cautiously, and they could vaguely see guns being aimed at them. Rebound shield experience +1. In addition, there was also a vague sight of a helicopter. Su Yao made a rough estimate and found that there were at least dozens of people, or even hundreds of people. Moreover, each one is fully armed and equipped with various weapons. Su Yao frowned slightly. As the people approached, he faintly saw a tall, strong man in a black jacket among the crowd, making an international gesture towards him. At the same time, a cruel smile appeared on the tall and strong man's face, and he shouted ferociously, "Little one, you are really here. If you dare to offend my organization several times in a row, little one, you will die miserably." Henrik smiled grimly. Soldiers surrounded the circle in the distance. The people from the underground mutant organization who had not entered the encirclement couldn't help but have a look of anticipation in their eyes. Come on, soon, the leader will show his ability and make that brat disappear completely. The power of the leader makes me feel terrible every time I think about it. That kid should be crushed to death like an ant, right? It wasn't even just them. Although this operation was very covert and fast, it was impossible to cover up the movement that had just occurred during the siege. In the distance, a large number of onlookers were following the soldiers, looking at this place from a distance. If you listen carefully, you can still hear the discussion. Are we finally going to catch that mutant fugitive? It's such a big battle, it seems he can't escape this time. Boom! Muffled thunder sounded overhead, dark clouds covered the sky, and the atmosphere was gloomy. The damp wind howled. Su Yao sat on the edge of the roof, his black hood swaying in the wind. His face was covered by the shadow of his hood, and his expression couldn't be clearly seen. Surrounded by armed soldiers, Colonel Kag, who led them, had a smile on his face. This powerful mutant is about to die in his hands now. It feels a little pleasant to think about it. Under the gaze of pairs of eyes, at this moment, no one thought that the young man could escape and would die in the hands of those soldiers sooner or later. Seeing Colonel Kag preparing to take action, Henrik looked ferocious and quickly approached. Boom! The fourth-floor roof. Under the gloomy dark clouds, the black clothes were blown by the cold wind, and the figure of the young man, who seemed to be blown away in the next moment, moved slowly. He took a step forward and stepped down slowly. Then, a scene that shocked everyone appeared. Blown by the strong wind, the young man slowly stepped on the air. 1 step, 2 steps. He walked through the air step by step, then stopped. Condescending. The young man looked at them quietly with a pair of golden eyes. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.